Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 102 today. And I am here with my guest, Aydin Paladin. This is the third time she's been on our show. Also, before I introduce, I just want to let people know this is actually episode 112. Sorry, a bit of a confusion there. But welcome, Aydin. Welcome back to my show for the third time. How have you been today?
Good. Like I said, I was a little sleepy. I think it's the weather, but it's getting sunnier outside. So, yeah. Waking up.
It's fair enough, you know. You told me you were having a bit of a hay fever problem, you know.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, I think it was the hay fever more than anything, because I was just woke up and I like, you know, that. But I took an allergy pill, got some coffee, so good to go now.
By the way, someone, gave a really strong reaction here. Hello, holy crap, it's Aydin Paladin. Sounds like a very famous person, Do you recognize him? Oh, you don't recognize him. So yeah, Aydin, what have you been up to since the last time you spoke? I saw that you've been working, you did a new video, on gaslighting, and you're working on a video with conspiracy theory, and what else have you been up to? Anything much?
No, just that stuff. The conspiracy video is cleaning up the audio, be editing that well, from now until it's done. Probably take me about a week and a half. Just gotta find a sponsor for it. I've got some lined up, so that's not a big deal. And it definitely will need a sponsor, because talking about conspiracy theories, even if it's just research about people who believe in conspiracy theories, is a bit of a no-no on YouTube, as they're very sensitive about that stuff.
Did you hear that YouTube? Did you hear that YouTube, removed, the thing about election misinformation? Basically, you can talk about election fraud, which is, I still don't trust them. But at the end of the day, everyone, who had their video deleted, which my interview with Christine Mayer got deleted because because it said we talked about election fraud when in fact I didn't, which is really freaking ridiculous.
Well, you know why they did that, right?
Yeah. Well.
I mean, okay, I'll tell you why they've undone their election fraud rules. That you can talk about it now. It's because we're headed into the 2024 election.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
And it's going to be Trump as the front runner, and Biden doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell, considering his approval ratings. I mean, if he wins, in quotations, or if he loses, either way. I mean, look, if he loses, here's the thing. This is why YouTube undid that, right? If he loses, they're going to claim it was fraud. You know when else the Democrats have claimed that an election was stolen? 2001, 2006, or 2004. Sorry, 2001, 2004, 2016, but not 2020. I mean, I actually have data on this from the conspiracy theory video I worked on. Is that in terms of the actual belief in election fraud, when this study was conducted in 2021, by the way, the data were collected, belief in election fraudulence was aligned with left-leaning political ideology. Interesting. I thought that was a right-wing conspiracy. Nope, it wasn't. So that's why they undid that. It's extremely transparent, and I mean, to anyone paying attention, it's extremely transparent. But good, let's put it this way. I don't think that will be applied equally. I would not be shocked if you still can't talk about the 2020 election, but you'll be able to talk about 2024. You know what I mean? And 2004 and 2001 and 2016. Those ones are fine to talk about because the Republican one.
Do you think where the election between Al Gore and George Bush was rigged? Because there's a lot of dodginess around that election too.
It was. I wouldn't be surprised. George Bush was a neocon. We're already in it. So, I tend to be of the belief that George Bush had at least foreknowledge, if not was actively involved in 9/11. By the way, also something that is believed largely by people on the left.
He was. He was a puppet. He did it on purpose to pretty much, go to war with Iran. Especially, when he had $7 trillion and that other building that collapsed. He's all in it. Mm-hmm.
Yep, the third tower that wasn't anywhere near him and just somehow collapsed at the same time. Yeah, and also if you look into the history of what was going on with all of those buildings, they were relatively new, but they had become out of dated very quickly and had just been bought and secured for a whole bunch of insurance money, like within days before the attacks. So that's curious. That's just, isn't that, what a coincidence. But yeah, so I don't trust George Bush. I absolutely could believe that he would have stolen that from Al Gore. I don't think Al Gore would have been a better president than Bush, to be honest. But that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I don't trust George Bush.
You would have, Aydin, you probably would have had a lot of teachings of man, bear, pig being real.
Oh, I know. Yes, and it's not like I would have. I'm sure Al Gore would have gone to war with somebody anyway. It doesn't really, I don't think that would have changed. Probably 9/11 would have still happened. It's just, it's.
Oh, absolutely. It was one of the plans, to bring in, like 2001, if you think about it, was pretty much the first stage of the empire falling to pieces, because it accelerated the wars, it accelerated, the banking crisis. 2008 accelerated its collapse. Yeah. And, Al Gore, would he have gone we probably would have had, climate change agenda, more quicker than what we did. Would have had
more of that. So, we still would have probably gone to war in the Middle East because it's about, maintaining and spreading American political hegemony. And it always is. We're in that now. It's called Ukraine. Which was 2014, Euromaidan. We're seeing the ramifications of U.S. meddling and spreading U.S. democratic hegemony overseas in Ukraine, which the Biden family has used consistently as their personal piggy bank since at least 2014, and surely going back before then, when, son of a bitch, prosecutor got fired, quote Biden, talking about Victor Shokin. It's just the transparency with which they flaunt. I think as part of the thing too, is that when you have that much power and you're that corrupt, they know they can get away with it. So I think they enjoy these completely corrupt global elites. They enjoy being able to go in front of people, tell them exactly what they did, and then have a laugh about it, which is exactly what Joe Biden's done.
Mm-hmm. There was a new book, that just came out, where pretty much said, the United States empire has, so there's basically an article I saw where it said that the United States has been, in this article, they pretty much, said that there was a book that blamed communism for a lot of deaths, even though communism has been, a result of a lot of deaths, killed 1 million people. It was a book released in 1997. And there is a book now that has been released that said the American empire, has been responsible for 300 million people, 300 million deaths worldwide, whether it's been World War II, whether it's been, this. And this guy said that if the culture was to switch into more leftist, you would have a museum where it would expose a lot of these people rather than, the communism, and stuff like that. So a lot of people seem to say that Russia and China, are bad governments. Well, look at the United States government. They're not good. They're very corrupt. The United States government are going around arresting its own people, especially when you had a British, person in the UK right now who pretty much, was exposing, thing in Ukraine, and he was held up. You also, had, what's his name, the guy Geralou, who was in Ukraine, and he also, got arrested, and he was hanging out in Ukraine. It's just and Julian Assange too, and everybody goes on about how, the United States is this amazing, and even conservatives too. Conservatives will say, the military industrial complex is the greatest thing. There's nothing wrong with Trump going to Iran, and killing Assami, and also, going to war, Yemen, and also increasing the military budget.
Trump is the first president in a very long time who didn't start any new wars, and who did manage to end some conflict. I will say that. Now, when he first got into office and he airstriked Syria, I went, oh, great, here we go again. But that was in the first 6 months. He clearly listened to what people were saying, and they were like, here we go again. Here's another freaking neocon, getting the U.S. involved in foreign wars, of which, in foreign countries of which we have no real business. And then he didn't do it again. When we have Biden's absolutely abysmal pullout from Afghanistan, which is, in my opinion, was done intentionally poorly to act as a reason to at any point go back in. You know what I mean?
And Aydin, look what's happening now. Iran and Afghanistan, they're kind of having a buff. That's just another plan, to try and go to war. Because right now, obviously, there's kind of like a pending. Is the next war going to be between Iran? Is it going to be with Iran? Is it going to be with Taiwan? Is that going to be the next globalist war?
Yeah, Taiwan's
people, pretty much, saying, I mean, other, things, potentially Greece and Turkey, but I think that's a long way away. I think maybe that's probably way off.
Taiwan's the big one that could pop off. I mean, and Beijing, Biden, we know which side he'll be on in that conflict. So,
absolutely, he'll be in Taiwan. He'll be on Taiwan's side, and I even worry Ron DeSantis will be.
You think he'd be on the side of an independent Taiwan?
Hmm?
You think Biden would be on the side of independency for Taiwan? He's owned by China.
I think it depends. China. I think in a way it depends, but you are right. He probably would side with China.
He might have to be discreet about it, but yeah, he's clearly in China's pocket, so I don't think I mean it would be real hard for America to dump how many billions, more or less, now that it's been. I mean, just the other day, another 300 million for Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely.
At this point, just from the U.S. That's not including all the other countries that have given huge amounts of money, but America also gives to Ukraine in the form of weapons. Or Poland has also done that, and a bunch of other European countries. It's billions and billions of dollars have been given from Western countries to Ukraine. And of course, part of the narrative of that is that, well, I mean, to quote Kamala Harris and her erudite foreign policy, Ukraine is a country. It exists next to a bigger country called Russia. Russia is a big country that decided to beat up on a small country, decided to invade a small country. It would be right. You didn't. That is a line by line quote from Kamala Harris. Yes, it'd be very interesting to see them take that exact same attitude, which is what they've been going with, is that Ukraine is a small country that is being invaded by Russia because they're fascists, and Putin is a dictator, and then take that same stuff and go like, because again, I think Biden would have to side with China because he's owned by China, and be like, well, actually, Taiwan deserves it. I guarantee you would see, if that happens, I would be shocked if it went any other direction. Taiwan is aggressing. It's really grateful Chinese clay. I'm just
for me, how I see it, I look, China might invade them. But also, you've got to remember, Taiwan does have a lot of, connections to the United States government. They have a lot of, billionaire globalists who live there. And personally, I saw this guy called Captain Cool 07. He's a very interesting guy. And I also watch, people from Grey Zone, and they talk about the potential. And Captain Cool, he reckons that, like, what will happen is Taiwan and China, there may be a war, but he has a feeling what's going to happen is Taiwan is not going to risk killing its own people. Instead, he reckons China might just, take over it politically, might use political influence to take over it, And look, even if there is a war between Taiwan and China, the military-industrial complex is not going to care. They're not going to care if they send thousands of people to Taiwan, because, I mean, dude, they don't care about the millions of, they don't care about the 200,000, Ukrainians are dying. They don't care about the British people who are dying in Ukraine. They don't care about the millions of people who are dying in Yemen, in the Yemen war, or in the Ethiopian war, or in Myanmar. By the way, Aydin, just to let you know, your friend Scotch Bacon has something to say here. He says, this is for your hay fever. He says, take one a night. It's basically Bender, but a higher dose.
Nitol. I'll check that out. I usually just take, what are these even? I don't know. Just little antihistamine tablets when it gets bad. It's only some days too, like, and then you never know how to. Oh, yeah. What is it called again? Alacan. I don't know. Cerdazine hydrochloride. Yeah. Just take one of those, and usually it gets fine. Although my voice is still a little, you can tell. Hopefully, then
your voice sounds fine today, Aydin. It sounds all good. You don't seem very sick to me at all. You actually seem, But I also take, that pill you just mentioned, antihistamine. It's very good. I get really bad hay fever. I had really bad hay fever. By the way, your friend Scotch Bacon just mentioned this. He was saying, speaking of Iran, did either of you see the latest Trump stuff regarding him supposedly preventing a war with Iran? What do you think of that?
I didn't hear about that, but let me look it up.
I do remember there was a rumor going on that, like, Ron Paul's son prevented him to going with war with Iran, because it was pretty scary, when he tacted similar, because everybody was worried, we were going to have war. Now, war with Iran would make the Iraqi war look like a piece of, just a walk in the park. You know, absolutely.
Trump aim of killing Iranian general was to stop war. This is from 2020. I vaguely recall this now. Okay. Democrats complained Trump hadn't consulted Congress. Some worried that the strike made war more likely. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo argued U.S. case with allies in Middle East and beyond, asserting Friday's drone strike on killing General Qasem Soleimani. Oh, right. Yep. Yeah, I remember when this happened. With an act of self-defense. I don't know. I mean, I don't have the knowledge of foreign policy enough to know whether or not that was the right call. I generally think that drone striking foreign countries probably generally doesn't stop wars. It usually tends to escalate them. But, I mean, a war didn't start after that, so...
Yeah, that is a good thing, you know. Like, I was worried, you know, war was going to happen between, because I remember watching Tulsi Gabbard. She's one girl who really is cool, you know, bringing up the things of Iran. You know, and Iran, you know, is a bit of an interesting country. You know, the Western media says it's a bit shit, but it's actually not that bad. You know, a lot of people say that, like, yeah, it's got problems, but, you know, it's actually developing economically. BRICS is helping it out. You know, yeah. I mean, you might have a different opinion.
Have you ever seen videos of Iran in the 70s?
Yep, I have. It was like, beautiful back in the 70s. And even in Iraq even Lebanon was. They were very good countries back then.
Iran was quickly becoming a first world nation very quickly. And then, you know, like, yeah, well, oil wars. So, and there was a rise in Islamic extremism, but I also think that the U.S. was probably involved in some of that.
Oh, absolutely. They have been, you know, involved, you know, pretty much right now, especially, you know, see, one of the things is right now, because Iran is being set up to go to war, you know, that obviously with Afghanistan, you know, the Taliban, which of course is funded by the United States, which is Julian Assange proved that with WikiLeaks. This is just another thing, you know, the war of Iran, ever since 2016, like ever since probably 2008, the Rothschilds have been wanting to go to war with Iran because Iran doesn't have a Rothschild centralized bank. The banking system doesn't charge it because it's actually, you know, in Islam, it's actually forbidden to charge interest free. And, you know, back in the day, you know, countries used to make a punishment, you know, that interest free was punishable by death. So it is kind of, you know, fishy. You know, maybe Israel might attack Iran, but who knows? You know, so yeah, it is a bit fishy. By the way, Scotch Bacon brought up another thing. You know, he says, as for my conspiracy regarding China, they are buying enough influence into the United States government so they can slide Taiwan into a war. To Taiwan without a war. I also believe they're moving into Canada, so count.
Yeah.
And he also said here they have a landing point for potential war with the United States. Yep, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
All of that's probably accurate. I mean,
go ahead. Yep.
Well, it's a nonstop thing of the U.S. playing either directly into foreign wars or indirectly into foreign wars. And we could go back, and it's not just the U.S. It's much of the Western world. I mean, look at what happened in Libya. Right, and it was Libya had too much independence. They had too much war, so the French government destabilized Libya basically because they wanted their natural resources.
Yep, they wanted their own national currency. They had free healthcare. They had a great system. It was probably the richest country in Africa. Had the highest standard of living, the highest living standard in Africa at the time. Yes, and the elite are like, nope, they're not going to have it. They weren't going to have it.
And they excuse as well, Gaddafi is a dictator. It's like, yeah, okay, but the country was doing pretty well. Like it was moving into being a modern nation, and they didn't like that. Now, did they?
Aydin, earlier I just saw you asked me about the China thing. Look, just to let you know, I kind of have a different opinion towards China. You know, if that's okay with you. Look, a lot of people will say that China is a dictatorship, but I've looked at different information. I watched this girl called Li Jingjing and also, you know, George Calloway. Personally, I don't actually think in a way, you know, China is a dictatorship because I actually lived in Hong Kong, Aydin, and in a way, you know, it's not as bad as people say it is. Like China, in a way, in my opinion, I mean, it is a bit strict, but there are protests that go on there. You know, their system, you know, is communist, but it's basically, you know, a system where it has one party, but all the parties cooperate together, basically. Like, basically, it's a political system, you know, where it's a political system with socialist characteristics and a national government. That's pretty much how it is. And a lot of conservatives will say that China is communist, you know, economically. It's very capitalist. You know, it's very capitalist.
Sorry, one second. I told you Bill just came home, so give me 1 second. Sorry.
No worries, take your time, Aydin. That's all good, Scotch bacon. Yeah, Hong Kong. So Scotch bacon, just so you know, I used to live in Hong Kong for I lived there for 7 years. Hong Kong is, I think it's more of a liberal economic place, but China is, though, capitalist. It is very capitalist. Like my I've got family members who have lived in Hong Kong, have been to China a lot. It's very capitalist. Hong Kong is very capitalist. But yeah, it is what it is. The United States, does seem to go after you, and it's called, China a dictatorship. But yeah, China does have its own elections. It does have its own, protesting that goes on. But China's a funny one. There's a lot of things we don't know about it. A lot of people say, it's a bad thing, but at the same time, they also say, China's killing Uyghur Muslims, but I don't think they are. I think that's just CIA propaganda, because there's a lot of Uyghur Muslims in that part of Xi'an who actually, have very good lives. So yeah, it is what it is.
Sorry about that. I told you Bill was going to go to the store, so I have to write him a little list real quick. But I'm back now for the most part.
What is your opinion towards China, Aydin? Do you think China's a dictatorship, or do you think like it's going to succeed economically into the world superpower going forward?
Well, I think China is a paper tiger, generally speaking. However, the U.S. look, I was actually just talking to Spoon about this either last night or the day before, and it was about we were talking about TikTok specifically, and he said that he's against the idea of banning TikTok, and I said I actually was not against the idea of banning TikTok because it's foreign spyware.
Yeah,
it's directly, well, the company that owns it, I forget the name of it now, is owned largely by the Chinese government, as are most companies in China, because, well, if you wanted to call it a dictatorship, it has communistic elements to it, in that the state owns most of the businesses, or owns major stakes in all of the businesses. So, the TikTok is going to be directed to serve the interests of the Chinese government. And we were debating about what that really means. It's like, if you use TikTok in China, it's all wholesome stuff. It's like science and math and cooking and
gardening. Yeah, absolutely. There are some cool videos, where people are doing dancing, like people doing display, Yeah,
very wholesome stuff, though. But you go to it in the U.S., and I think, let me see if I can find our conversation on this, because I don't want to misquote him. About
Aydin, have you seen any videos, of your gardening thing where people, where you hear your favorite voice on?
Oh, what? Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny, man. You told me you get pissed off at that.
Yeah, what did he say here? It was about well, let's see. Let me get back in this. He asked me, do you hate the app itself? And I said the app is Chinese agitprop. He said, you hate its reputation, but here's the thing. And I said, he said, if you restricted its use, aka Chinese state style, you'd say it's oppressing freedom. But if you let it loose, then it's China's fault, which is not what I actually think. And that was him saying that. And I said, by the way, I'm the only one here who uses this app, which is true. I do use TikTok from time to time. I scroll through it sometimes before I go to sleep. And by the way, what TikTok shows me is gardening and cooking and restoration videos and like interior design stuff. It's all, I don't get any transgender stuff, I don't get any degenerate stuff, because the app learns from what you want. So there is an element of it to that. But that's the weird, creepy groomer stuff. It just isn't available at all on the Chinese version. I said,
China definitely has done a very good job, protecting its, population from all the transgender agenda, a lot in the East, which I really praise them for. It's a good thing they're doing that, because what you're seeing in the West, is just absolutely criminal. By the way, your friend Scotch Bacon just brought up, a good point. So he mentioned, so he said, yes, it's more liberal than China. China, I consider, is an evolution of communism that has adapted the strength of capitalism, where we're training the expert. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And he also said here they're about, and he also said here they're about to hit a population collapse, though. Hence why they're moving into Africa. I think, Africa will become the China for China. China becomes the new United States, or that's the plan at least. Interesting.
Well,
What do you think of that?
They've been doing that for forever in Sudan, and moving into other countries in Africa to basically strip them of their wealth. And of course, it's fine when the Chinese do it. If Westerners do it, it's imperialism and colonialism. But it's fine when the Chinese do it for some reason. However, also that is completely correct about the population collapse. China is considerably below replacement levels in terms of, which sounds crazy considering the population of China, but the long-lasting effects of the one-child policy, even now that it's been largely rescinded, are still in effect in terms of the way the population behaves. People are not having children at there. It's considerably below replacement levels. By the way, it is in almost every Western country as well. But
oh yeah, the fertility rate. See, I was seeing an article that apparently Africa is going to have a lot of the world's babies. You know, more of the world's babies, and a lot of the African countries like Rwanda, Ghana, I think, are the world's fastest growing economies. Africa has got a good future. You know, if it just puts itself forward. And I will be honest, you might disagree, but China actually has helped Africa, you know, build a lot of these places. It's helped, you know, like help them build their own trainways. It's helped them develop their economy. Personally, the debt thing, I mean, is a bit funny, but they've done more to help, you know, Africa develop than, you know, that's why a lot of Africans like China, you know, because they've actually done more to help, you know, Africa than the United States. Go ahead, Aydin.
Oh, yeah, this was, sorry, I was, two things. I'll keep them. I got one written or one on the screen and the other one I was just thinking about. The thing about China being a paper tiger and what I was talking about with Spoon is that he's like, China would never want America to collapse because, you know, they make so much money off America. And I said, why wouldn't China want to be number one and just take over America and make America essentially a vassal state? And one way that you do that is by destabilizing the American society. I think that could be that's why I think it's agitprop. I think TikTok is agitprop to accelerate the collapse of America and to position China into a place of power. Because they don't have, they are not the economic powerhouse that they portray themselves as. Like I said, they're a paper tiger in that way. However, if you destabilize America, it's going to leave a power vacuum. And China and the BRICS nations, I think, are wanting to step into that vacuum. So of course, why wouldn't China want to destabilize the US?
It's not going to be it's not going to be one superpower.
It won't be overnight.
It's going to be multipolar. Yeah. It's going to be multipolar. Like, in my opinion, India, look, I think China will be the world's superpower, but it will only be short. I kind of think they will be for 15 years. And then India, because India's developing, man. I mean, Russia's developing, you know, Africa's developing, you know, the BRICS is changing everything, you know, and you see a statistic, BRICS is outperforming, you know, the West is done. You know, as soon as the West has control, you know, all these African nations, you know, it's no longer what it used to be.
Yeah. It really, and those BRICS nations, I mean, again, that's, you know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. I mean, those are the ones to look out for, I think, in terms of the future. And it will not be, there's always this idea when you talk about collapse that it's like that one day things just fall apart. And it's not like that. It's usually a slow decay. I mean, that's what happened to the Roman Empire. And I think that...
absolutely. That's what happened to the Greek Empire, the Mongol Empire.
And people have been saying that about America for the last 100 years, but I think we actually are entering it. Oh, the other thing I was talking about with China and Africa is I was actually talking about this film. I've talked about it quite a few times with Spoon, and I've never seen the whole thing. I've only seen clips. We really got to get together. Like, I'll do it with the server at some point. We'll do a watch together of the film Empire of Dust, which is about this Chinese guy who goes to he works for the Chinese railway company, who gets sent to the Democratic Republic of the Congo to try and essentially like reestablish their infrastructure so the Chinese railway company can keep making money off of the natural resources in the Congo, because the British, you know, I think, was it the British or the French in the Congo?
Yeah, it was French. It was the
French. Oh,
French, yeah, it was.
And they set up all these railways and all of this infrastructure. And in the years since they've left, the local people, rather than using that infrastructure, they've torn it up. They've stripped everything of its copper, of its iron, of anything, steel. They just stripped it and melted it down or sold it. And so the infrastructure.
Correct here. Scotch just correct here. Dutch.
Yeah. Oh, right. It was one of the European nations, but I should have known that actually, since I was talking to my South African friend about it. But yeah, it's a very interesting film from all the scenes I've seen of it. If you've ever seen the clip of the Chinese guy going, "It's all so tiresome," it's from that documentary, which again, I've never seen the full thing of, but we really need to watch it. Yeah, China's, of course, has a vested interest in that, in terms of taking the natural resources from Africa, which is abundant in them. but is full of countries that are corrupt or don't have the infrastructure to, or the cultural like kind of requirements, technological requirements to take advantage of the natural resources. And you can blame that on colonialism, you can blame that on imperialism, you could blame that on cultural differences. I don't care where the blame lies, but the countries just simply aren't advanced enough to take advantage of the vast amounts of natural resources they have. And you also see, like, China's been involved in, like I said, in oh shit, now I lost the name of the country instead of a little sleepy. The no, it wasn't the Congo, though the Congo is terrible too. Oh, Sudan.
Sudan, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pumping out natural resources, oil in particular, out of Sudan. Meanwhile, the country for decades has been in one of the most repulsively disgusting civil wars.
It's absolutely messed up, you know. It is
and
messed up. Same with Ethiopia. You know, Ethiopia is also in a mess. That's probably the worst, you know, war that's been going on. Apparently, Ethiopia has. You know, I watched a video with Jackson Hint School, and you know what I found out? I found out that even Myanmar is having a conflict right now. I mean, you don't even hear that on the news. What's going on there?
It doesn't matter to the West, and by that I mean largely the United States' democratic hegemony project, global democratic hegemony project. So those countries don't matter as much to that project, so you don't hear about them. Yeah, the war in Sudan. I watched some documentaries about that were also just horrifying. And in both in Sudan and in Ethiopia, you have one of the things that is similar in both of those cases is you have what can only be described, in my opinion, as a systematic genocide of Christians, Black Christians.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's happening in Nigeria too. In Nigeria, you're seeing Christians getting killed. Egypt's having that problem too. It's really messed up.
It's very, very sad. And yeah, we don't hear it. And that's been going on for decades, and you don't hear about that at all, of course. Which is, again, I can't help but think that that's on purpose to some degree, you know? It's just not, it's not in the US's and much of the West's interest. We're concerned with Ukraine. And why are we concerned with Ukraine? I mean, the way that if you listen to pundits, particularly on the left, they'll tell you, oh, well, it's because Vladimir Putin's a dictator. If it's Ukraine today, then it will be Germany tomorrow, and then it's France, and then it's England. And it's like, no, where are you getting this from? I know it's propaganda is where you're getting it from, but the situation with Ukraine isn't so simple. That's why I made like a 2-hour-long video on it. It's like, you got to understand that there's a very long history between these places. That the idea of Ukraine is extremely new, actually, in the cultural landscape, the historical cultural landscape of the world. Yes, they do speak a different language, but Ukraine as a unified country, that's quite new, and that's why you have issues with. Did you see Callum's new video where he went to Serbia and Transnistria? I was just watching it.
No, I actually didn't. I didn't see that.
Yeah, just premiered yesterday. Which, I mean, that madman, like, you know, going to Afghanistan, and now he's gone to Transnistria, which is, of course, right next to Ukraine, and is largely not considered to be a country by, you know, any kind of external powers. But it was astonishing looking at these videos from Transnistria, and despite the fact that it's not considered to be a country and it's right next to war-torn Ukraine, it's so clean. There's no trash on the streets. Everything is being like upheld. It's green. There's gardens planted everywhere. It's like, how is this a thing? It was very odd. And he went to Kosovo too, which was, oof.
Yeah, the things are getting pretty bad in Kosovo at the moment in Serbia. And, you know, the West are definitely having a lot to play on that, you know.
We've never been involved with that one before.
Oh, yeah, the anniversary of Yugoslavia. I mean, Yugoslavia used to be a great country back in the 60s and 70s. You know, it was very peaceful. They had their own economic system, and yet they were a country that was a threat against the elite, and they also got destroyed, you know, like ever since 1999, you know, the bombing that happened in 1999 in Serbia, you know, where you pretty much, you know, had the United States government and NATO pretty much, you know, bombing a Chinese embassy.
Yep.
Which is absolutely messed up, you know. By the way, your friend Scotch, I just wanted to get back to you. So he's saying, I'll try to leave it here, not be a third wheel. You're fine, Scotch. Don't worry about it. Aiden and me enjoying it.
We're just hanging out. We're just shooting the shit, as it were.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm doing pretty bad, Aiden, at the moment.
No, you're not. No, we're just hanging out.
He said, "Lame. The way he talks of his experience is hilarious. Good of Africans is hilarious."
It is like from all the clips I've seen, and I feel bad for the other guy. The guy he's working with, because it's like who's a native Congolese, but who speaks Chinese, and it's like the Chinese guy keeps telling him like, your people, you got your independence, you got your freedom, and then within a couple of decades, you just destroyed your own country, and you can see in the other guy's face that he knows it's true, but it's still like it's an ego threat. It must hurt, to be like, oh, you got your independence and you squandered it. It's the stuff like right now. We just talked about this on the podcast the other day. They're implementing new laws in South Africa that are going to make it so basically you can't hire whites in South Africa.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely going to be a thing. That is very bad.
I mean, you can, but there's going to be super crazy quotas where it's got to be like 95% Black South African. And so like, no bourse allowed, right? Which is, I guess, in their mind, that's a fair play, right? Turnabout. But the thing is that, 30 years ago, South Africa was basically a first world country. I would struggle to call it one now.
That's so tough. In 1990, you're saying?
Yeah, 1980s to 90s. Like it's Spoon's not the only person I know from South Africa. I or that I've listened to. I for some reason I come across a lot of YouTubers who are from South Africa. But guess what? None of them live there. There's two different like YouTube like movie and culture reviewer kind of people that I watch, and both of them I have heard say very similar things. Like, yeah, my family had to leave South Africa because in the 90s. It got terrible. I mean, like after the human rights tribunals and stuff, it became just it became too dangerous. It became too dangerous. It was
absolutely insane,
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so South Africa, yes, it was better in the 70s and 80s, but yeah, it didn't excuse the fact it didn't treat Black people very well. It wasn't a country, that treated Black people very well. And even when the apartheid happened, even when, Black people got the right, to vote, South Africa never was a country that has been able to sustain itself. I mean, BRICS, look, maybe might change that, but it's so far gone. South Africa politically is fucked. So much crime. There's so much. Johannesburg is too dangerous. Cape Town is too dangerous. It's well. I mean, Cape Town's not too bad. It might be the nice place, but it's definitely not what it used to be. But it's just it's sad. It is very sad. South Africa, maybe it was good in the 70s and 80s, but still it had its problems. And the British didn't, treat a lot of South Africans there very well, but it's a very divided country. And I'm worried that United States is going to become like that once the dollar, because I remember Jordan Peterson mentioned how America could be similar to South Africa. And I wouldn't be surprised, after the dollar collapses, it reaches that stage.
Yeah, I remember Peterson saying that as well, and certainly the racial tensions in the U.S. Now, there's a big difference. The racial composition of the United States is 13% Black, and it's rapidly approaching like 50% white. But 13% Black population, that population has not grown, and has only appeared to be closer towards shrinking for decades and decades. The Black population is not growing. Now, if you listen to radical leftists, they'll say that's because where was this quote from? Oh, it was Nuance Bro was on a Twitter live, and this like wokeoid came in and said something like some millions of Blacks were being killed in the United States by police every year, to the point where I don't remember exactly what number she gave, but when you crunched it, it would have been that if that number of Black people were being killed every year by the police, there would be no Black people in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. That's a stupid argument, It's pretty much, just like saying, like, how people say there's a transgender side, but in fact there isn't. That's just a dumb argument.
Well, but they would, I could see how people would say, like, well, why is the Black population not growing? I don't know. It could be to do with high Black on Black crime rates. It could have to do with the fact that Planned Parenthoods are all placed very strategically in Black communities, and Black communities have the highest rates of abortion. I don't know. It could have something to do with those things, and not with police killing Black people. More Black people killing themselves and each other than it does with evil whitey. But there's an interesting same notion, though, that is occurring in the U.S. that Peterson, I think, aptly points out is what happened in South Africa. The major difference is that the white versus Black population in South Africa is far more skewed towards black population than it is in the US comparatively. So they do make up a far larger portion of the population, obviously. So that there is that difference. However, I certainly seem to think that Dr. Peterson may not be wrong in that prescription of going in the same, because we're doing that stuff, right? That's what affirmative action is designed to do. You know, basically what happened after apartheid was over and all of the civil rights tribunals was they got rid of all of the white people, or as many as they could, out of positions of power in the government and positions of power in any sort of capacity. And what do we see happening in the United States? Well, we have to get rid of all white men in particular, but then also white women, and replace them all with minorities, and particularly black people. But then also, well, you can be white, but you have to be a transgender person. Of course, then you can have a or a feminist sometimes, but they're getting rid of them too.
Biden's, transporting system. Did you see it was all female? Did you see that? It was the first, all female, transporting system to the event you went to the other day.
Oh, no, what was this?
Oh, it's something to do, I think it may be where the event is for. By the way, your friend Scotch Bacon was saying something. He say you squandered it laments about how the Chinese would figure it out all by themselves and would have loved for the white man to have left them with it. And he's also going to say this. He also said this. He also said, just going to say this in response to South Africa treating blacks bad. Do you remember when Saddam said about the way he did? And then all of a sudden, he also said he needed to act that way because his people were worse. Yeah, that's true.
That is the explanation. I mean, it's not just white South Africans who were leaving. I mean, they're being actively murdered, by the way, the Boers, the farmers, they're being actively and not just killed. I bring this book up often. Well, anytime I talk about South Africa, but it's called Into the Cannibal's Plot. I read it last year. Mm-hmm. And it's you read about the things that they do to these people. I mean, the necklacing is obviously
it's absolutely fucked. I remember, a long time ago, I spoke to a South African, and he had a mate who literally, was in his house one time, and his family were having dinner, and all of a sudden these people just barged in and they just shot them. They were found dead on their dinner table when they were eating food, and it was at nighttime. It was fucked up, man. It was absolutely fucked up.
There's nothing. I mean, I don't know what you do about it, but it's because there was also not completely misplaced, but a perception that the whites had colonized and abused the black Africans, and it was but this is and why this is dangerous and why Peterson probably is right is that it's the same sentiment you see that is being espoused and promulgated in the United States, which is that white people did you dirty. They the reason you're poor, every problem in your life is because of whitey. And that's how you get South Africa today. And that's where the US is rapidly heading. And why you get things like the bike Karen thing that happened the other week, right? Where
that was absolutely ridiculous.
But the event itself was ridiculous, and apparently is a common scheme and scam that happens all the time involving these bikes. Which, by the way, if you don't return the bike, it's a $5,000 fine. So, you have to pay the company $5,000. I think it was $3,000 or $5,000.
That's a lot of money.
well, for these ones, they're these e-bikes. They've got motors on them, I guess. So you don't have to pedal all the time. Or I guess I don't know how much of a motor it is, but I guess you charge it up in some degree. So that you don't have to pedal, and they're not everywhere because they're more expensive. But if you steal the bike or don't return it, then so that woman potentially could have owed a $5,000 fine to the City Bikes place if the bike was not returned.
I know what you mean. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly. By the way, here in New Zealand, there was a place, I think it was in Mission Bay, where these people were pretty much, taking some of the scooters home on their car.
Oh wow.
These scooters home, and they were also told off about it. It was pretty funny.
When you tell a group of people that you can do whatever you want because you've been oppressed, and this is your reparations, which is what they say all the time.
They're going to feel like they have a sense of belonging. They feel like they're important, and that doesn't help. Telling black people, that in America they're oppressed. They're not oppressed. Black people can get a job. Black people are able to vote. Black people can become president. And to say the United States is a racist country, that's actually not true. America's a very diverse country. Same with New Zealand. Same with, Australia. They're very diverse countries, just like Britain. Britain is a very diverse country. And it's funny how, these leftists will say, that China and Russia are like racist countries, but yet those countries have a lot of races. I feel like that whole racist argument is just, it's just like, it's overused, Aydin. It really is,
it really is. And I think it's losing its power. I mean, I said Russia's homogenous. Russia's a lot of different types of people, but because there's more Asiatic Russians, there's more Eastern Euro Russians, there's more like even
there's a lot of Muslims who live there, a lot of Slavs, a lot of Chinese,
yes, Muslims. So Russia actually is a diverse country, but it's mostly just because of it's massive in terms of its actual size. So I guess, but Russia is, even though it's diverse, you speak Russian. You know what I mean? I think in some local areas
there's a lot of other languages people speak. A lot of Muslim and a lot of Arab, language too. Especially in Texas, because it is very diverse. But that's because Russia has a lot of history. The Russian Empire has a lot of history with like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and also Mongolia.
Yes, and which is quite different than the United States in terms of the U.S. The British, the Dutch, the French. They come over, they settle in the United States. There's native tribes, but yes, via genocide, intentional killing of natives, but also unintentional genocide via spread of disease.
Oh yeah, the natives were committing genocide amongst themselves too. They were also, practicing like human sacrificing. It doesn't exclude. I mean, look, we're not saying that America's not guilty. Like the Americans at the time were definitely killing native people, but also the tribes were. The stuff they worshipping was pretty bad. There are some peaceful tribes. So yeah. By the way,
South America, but
your friend Scott Bacon was saying Britain isn't and wasn't diverse.
I mean, it depends on your definition of diverse, right? Because you've got Anglo-Saxons, Celts, Normans. You've got all kinds of different Europeans in Britain on and off over the years. So if by that you mean diverse, yeah, sure, it's always been very diverse. But Russia's a little bit different because of the huge span of the Russian Empire. So you do end up with Muslims who speak Arabic, and you end up with people who Asiatics type people who speak Chinese, and Mongolians, and Slavs, and like I said, Northern Europeans. So it's all over the place in Russia, but they don't seem to have the same kind of problems the United States has, because I think there's the
because a lot of them live very good lives. It's very developed. A lot of the government supports them a lot. That's why a lot of people in China do very well, because a lot of the Chinese government help the ethnic communities there.
Well,
it's the same thing in Hong Kong. Same thing in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong,
help out the Uyghurs, my dude.
What are you saying?
It didn't really help out the Uyghurs, my dude.
The Uyghur Muslims, I don't think there's a genocide going on. I kind of think that's just CIA propaganda. I think that's just CIA propaganda. I think, because I've watched a lot of videos where Uyghur Muslims live very good lives there, and I actually, lived in Hong Kong, and they tell me, that in China, a lot of them live good lives. I said, and you got to remember, there's more mosques in China than there is in the United States. There's also more mosques in Russia than there is in the United States. So,
I think that the difference is that the United States currently, and again, going back to very similar to what happened to South Africa, is emphasizing this victim culture. And it is useful to the Democrats in the United States because you basically have a militia to engage in political activism for you at any point in time, where you can call upon them. They can bring up their grievance culture, which is about what all this is, grievance culture. And everyone will bow down to it. And the LGBTQI2SA+ is just another element of this grievance culture shit of I'm being oppressed, I'm being genocided, I'm being this, that, or the other. And the reason why that works is because of the Protestant work ethic modality and ideology of most white people, and the American mentality, which is that, oh no, we want to help each other out because we're all in this together, we're all Americans, we don't want people to be suffering. And so good people fall for that grift. They do every single day because I don't want to hurt anybody. That they kind of want to hurt you because they see that as weak. It's like, wow, I can take advantage of this. I can take advantage of your, of your goodwill. And you see that happening all over the place. It's also, the same thing with the grievance culture and the racist shit posting in the UK with that guy Mizzy just the other day. That keeps doing it. This TikTok guy, if anyone's not familiar.
I know, like, who on earth does that for fame? Like, go into a woman's house and, like, all of a sudden disrupt people. That's not good. That's
stole
not,
an elderly woman's stole an elderly woman's dog. He did he found like an Orthodox Jewish guy in the subway and like jumped on him, literally did like a flip over
I know.
him.
It's absolutely ridiculous. The respect that
it's when he's made some new videos since this Piers Morgan, which I think he ran a circle around Piers just because Piers is an idiot. But because Piers, the second you bring up, this is the thing. Why did he run a circle around Piers? Because he brought out the racism. He brought out the word racism, and Piers has to go, oh, what? I'm not racist. No, I'm not racist. And all of a sudden, it has nothing to do with his race in reality in terms of his behavior. But for him, yeah, it does, because he knows that's his get out of literal jail, in this case, free card of, oh, you're just doing this because I'm black. You're just picking on me because I'm black. It doesn't matter that I've done a bunch of literal crimes and was slapped with like a 200, 300 pound fine for all the stuff he had done, terrorizing people, walking up to women on the subway, on the tube and saying, do you want to die? Do you want to die? And like, oh my God.
You know what, Aydin, when I was seeing that, I actually saw that from Paul Joseph Watson's video, and I'm like, how the fuck is this guy who the fuck does that? How does anybody think that's funny? Like going up to people and literally, like saying, oh, do you want to die? And literally, like fucking, there was a guy also a long time ago called Tyrone who would go up to people and he used to smack, fucking, like cigarettes out of people's thing. It's not actually funny because you can get yourself kicked in, and it's just like and you know what, Aydin, this goes back to your video, the whole gaslighting, the whole worship of politics. Because one thing, Aydin, the reason why I feel like a lot of people nowadays, especially a lot of youth and especially a lot of people, will follow, stupid figures like that is because people are desperate. They want to find something, to look into. That's the human nature. We always need, human nature. We will desperately, even when we were apes, if you believe in, the evolution theory, even when we were apes, we used to worship the sun. We would find, something desperate, whether if it means, to worship an idiot or something like that, because that gives us a sense of belonging. One thing humans want is a self of belonging. That's one thing, the human nature. And if there's no self-belonging, that's a very thing that puts us down. So obviously, people are looking at this guy and thinking, oh, he's obviously clever. But in today's world, when you have social media and social influence that's, making people more depressed, it's just fucked.
It is fucked. Give me 1 sec. I gotta give Bill my list. Hang on.
No worries. Yeah, see what you're saying, Scott, here. You're saying a government prioritizing helping its primary indigenous group. That's nuts. Also, he says here, I wish it was. Scotch Bacon, what did you think about the whole, that guy who was going around doing that? Because I thought it was really ridiculous. What do you think about it? There's also, and just to let you guys know, do you guys have anyone else? Does anyone else wants to comment something? You're more than welcome, and we'll answer it.
All right, sorry about that. I had to give Bill my shopping list, which is nice of him to go shopping. But this Mezzy character, though, he's come out now. So he's been banned from TikTok, right? And he's complaining, crying and complaining that it's not fair, it's racist that he's been banned. And all he's left on is Twitch, is the only place that he apparently hasn't been banned from. And it's just,
but Twitch, is just stupid, stupid content. He basically, Mizzy, Scott Bacon had to say something. Mizzy basically did what that black guy did on the train who got choked out did. The only difference is that he hasn't come up against someone to correct him. Of course, that should have been his dad. Yep, he didn't have a dad in the home, and that's what a lot of people do. Yeah, speaking of that, what do you think about, that black guy who was on that train, and like he got choked out because he was, disturbing people on a train, and especially if you're going around, threatening to, I think his name's Jack. Is it Jack? I think the Jack was the guy, he got arrested. I mean, the guy who got arrested, who was actually just protecting a woman from that guy, the black guy, pretty much going around.
Was the guy's name, and the Marine who tackled him was, let's see, what's his name? They have it in this article. On Eric Garner. Where's the? They have the name of the officer. Well, yeah, he's been arraigned now, or taken into custody.
He's been arrested. Absolutely ridiculous. If it, for example, if it would now, let's say if it was a black person, who was choking like a white man, a crazy white man on the bus, who was harassing a girl. Obviously, even if it was a white guy who was harassing a girl like the black guy did there, of course, you should step in and stop it. But if it was a black guy doing it, the whole media would have been like, nah, that's okay.
Right.
The hypocrisy, the double standard,
Of course, it's because it's so, we've gone so far beyond the soft bigotry of low expectations into like this whole new realm of absurdity. Daniel Penny is the name of the officer, or the former Marine who put him in the chokehold. But it's like the trust in society is so low, and people are so afraid of being canceled, or in this case, this guy. The guy Jordan Neely was notorious in the area for harassing people because he's schizophrenic or something. He's crazy.
He was also a street performer. Yeah, and there was a lot of incidents of him harassing people. You are correct. Oh, he wasn't a street performer.
He was. Yes, he was. Okay, look, I don't know how much I believe this. The narrative is that he was a Michael Jackson impersonator and street performer, and that this was just part of his show. But then, like, all the people, look, there's a reason why. I remember seeing some of the early articles, and they're like, the disgusting racist people on the train were cheering and clapping when he died. It's like, no. They were clapping when he was subdued because they knew this guy. They take this, train to commute every day, and every day this dude harasses them. So they were clapping because they're like, oh, finally, someone has done something. But the society is so low trust now.
You want a guy every day on a bus to come up to you and like poke you or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's common sense, people. Why on earth would people be cheering? Like, honestly, even if it was a white person who was doing the same thing as the black person, of course people would want to deal with him. It's the world is so stupid now.
Yes, we live in a world with totally different sets of rules, right? It's one rule for thee and another for me. Mezzi gets off with a literal, I mean, not literal, but with a figurative slap on the wrist, a 300-pound fine, which he's complaining about because he's like, oh, I can't make any money now because they took my TikTok away. And it's like, but you're still allowed to be there on Twitch. And the video that I saw of him on Twitch, he's just sitting there and like mugging into the camera and not really saying anything because he can't do his, quote, pranks. He has no personality. He has nothing. All he can do now is sit there and basically whine about not being able to harass people anymore. And and by the way, he'll be back to doing it soon. After he initially got in trouble over this, he went and hijacked a train. Like, I mean,
wow.
Can you
That's so fucked up.
He walked into the control center at the front of one of the trains on the tube and picked up the intercom and started talking trash and stuff. I mean, we really have created, very interestingly, a new segregated society where if your skin color is dark enough, or if you identify the right way, this is the thing, like, too, that we see in terms of the identifying the right way. This has been a whole issue with women's prisons. Oh, you raped and murdered somebody? Just identify as a woman, and they'll put you into a woman's prison.
I know, it's absolutely fucked up, isn't it? That's something that really fucks me off. The fact that everybody like says, oh, a guy can go in a woman's prison because he identifies as a woman. Stupid. It's absolutely messed up, the time we're living in.
I do think that people are getting sick of it. And I say that because
absolutely. You know, people are getting tired of it. You know, people. I think what we are probably going to see, because we are probably going to see an era where people rise up, where people have enough of it. And I think, look, it's destroying the West, and I think people are going to realize enough's enough. We've had enough of it, and good. You know, it's a good thing. You know, that a lot of laws are being passed that is banning this stuff now, which is good. You just need, you know, Trump or someone to go in the president's office and make it a felony to, you know, to push this stuff on kids. It's really, you know, just. No.
You know, I'm very against the federal government making any rules for states. I'm a statist, but not a federalist. So, but at the same time, so I'm more in favor of the states making these rules. However, like, I think we're really, I've been thinking that for years. That this is going to come back to bite these people in the ass. And I think really the first time I felt truly hopeful about that actually happening, because I kept thinking, it's got to happen. You know, eventually something's got to give. And in the last month and a half or so, with the Bud Light thing, Target, and now we have the holy month that we're in right now, and it's not working. I mean,
hey, Aydin,
go ahead.
What would you say so far has been the cringiest Pride Month meme you've seen, or like the most disgusting, you know, like photo of like from a magazine you've seen from Pride Month? So far.
I don't know if I've seen what cringe I've really seen, because actually here's the interesting thing. People have noticed that for the first time in about 6 years, a whole bunch of companies have not changed their logo on Twitter to Pride.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, Target didn't, interestingly enough.
Apparently they lost like $1 billion from the whole kids thing, like, which was absolutely, you know, not a good idea. There was a girl, by the way, Aydin, called Kaylee Campbell, who I had on my show a long time ago. She came on episode 2. She came on episode, you know, 24 of my podcast, and she did a fantastic video showing everybody how Target is targeting kids, you know, with addresses. Oh, wow. Very good video. Very good video. It's fantastic, you know. I'll try to find it with you. Do you want to see it? Or
yeah, sure, send it to me. The thing with Target that's interesting is, I think, now I haven't looked at the most recent figures, but when I looked at it as of last Wednesday, I think they were at a $12 billion loss.
Wow.
Bud Light is at 30%, closing in on 40% of their market share. These are like not, well, it can't be billion. It must have been million. How much? That can't be billion, right? How much is Target lost? Target lost.
He's saying like the billion this billion.
I always get them. No, 4 billion in less than a week. That was 21 hours ago. I think it might have been 12 billion for. Wow, yeah, it might have been 12 billion for Bud. It's 4 billion for Target. God damn, like these are huge numbers.
Like, I know, it's absolutely ridiculous, you know.
Well, they deserve it.
They do.
Deserve it.
They do. They absolutely do deserve it. You know, they got to stop going on.
I said 12. It's $27 billion, Anheuser-Busch. Wow. And 4 billion for Target. The Target one and the one from Bud are both in the last 24 hours. So, I mean, these are ridiculous losses. I mean, like the whole reason these companies do this, right, is to raise their ESG score so that they can get money from these massive groups like BlackRock and Vanguard. At what point can they not afford BlackRock and Vanguard, even though being massive companies? Do they have to cut? Does their subsidies outweigh the loss in sales? Because at least with Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch products, that one is so easy to boycott, right? Like there might be some places in the US where you can't, where there isn't, the only store that's closest to you or that's most convenient to you is a Target, right? But you have there's a huge amount of choices in beer, you know, and it is frustrating because Modelo appears to be the one that people have moved to, and Modelo is technically owned by Anheuser-Busch, but not operated by Anheuser-Busch in the United States. I would suggest, I don't know, anything that's not owned by Anheuser-Busch, but that is a bigger ask, because then you need people to know, like, what are all the beers owned by Anheuser-Busch? And it's a lot of them. The one that we have in massive quantities, because Bill always gets it for at Christmas time. He gets a bonus, and they either will give him like a bottle of wine or a crate of Carlsberg. So we always take the crate of Carlsberg, which is not great beer, but you put a lime in it and it's okay. And Carlsberg is their own independent thing. Like they're
What would you say is your favorite beer, Aydin?
Oh, unfortunately, Corona, which is owned by Anheuser-Busch. But hang on, I don't need that. I'll have a Dos Equis. I like cervezas, Mexican style beers. I'm not a big beer drinker, but if I'm gonna have one, I'll have a Mexican style beer. And then there's one here called I think it's called like Tres Diablos. Wonder who owns them. Danville Brewing Company.
What about you, Scotch Bacon? What's your favorite beer? And everybody else who's watching, comment what your favorite beer is.
Danville Brewing. This is probably some like local-ish kind of place. What is this? Sprawling Industrial Brew Pub. This isn't the same thing. That's not the thing that I got. It's I don't know what it's called. I thought it was called like Diablos or something, but it's sold here in the UK, which means it's probably not, or here in Guernsey, which means it's probably not an American beer. I haven't checked it, but it's a cerveza, which is what I like. I like cervezas. They're light. They go great with a lime, and I'm happy. I'm not a big fan of Bud Light tastes disgusting. All Bud products.
I can imagine it does. I've never had it, but I can imagine it tastes disgusting. By the way, Scotch Bacon says that his favorite beer is Old Mount Cider.
I'd much rather have a cider. I'd much rather have a cider than a beer. But and I love a Strongbow. That's my go-to cider. But in terms of like the major brands, but woodchucks are good. I've never seen them here. I'm in the UK, but yeah, I do like woodchucks, and I prefer Strongbow, but I prefer Strongbow on tap. Anyway, it's getting a little bit off, but yeah, I don't mind if particularly because Modelo apparently is not owned directly by Anheuser-Busch in the US. Is there some weird thing going on there? That's fine. And again, I'm looking at the graph right now of who owns what beer.
Do you want to show the graph? Do you want to show the graph on the screen?
Here, I'll just I'll send it to you because that's easier probably. I'll just put it in the Streamlabs link, which makes it easier if you are someone who drinks beer with some regularity. It is worth it to look at this because you'll see like Modelo is here on their import. Man, it's like low quality, but whatever.
It's okay, no worries, don't worry about it. Hang on, just sharing it,
But the ones that are fine, Heineken is not owned. There is some or all of these are. There's like a merger between Molson Coors and Bud Light, AB InBev. So technically, also Molson Coors. Do you have it up on stream? I cannot.
Yeah, can you see
it? No, not on Streamlabs.
Yeah, I've got a new computer, so it might be a bit slow.
I can just.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
That's it. That's the Desperados beer. Oh, good. That's owned by Heineken. Yeah, that's the cerveza I like. Tequila flavored beer. That's the one I get over here. Good. It's not owned by InBev. Okay, or Molson Coors. So
there it is. There it is. You can see it now.
Yes.
You can see it.
Yes. So the ones that I like I have no problem not drinking Corona at all. But yeah, you have Dos Equis, you've got Desperados, if you like cervezas, so you absolutely can avoid it. Even if you have like like me, like I have a very specific type of beer that I like, which are Mexican style cervezas. And then you've got Guinness, Harp, there's a Diageo, Kilkenny, the Irish style beers, and then Carlsberg. I'm not gonna say Carlsberg's very good, but
Carlsberg tastes like fucking shit. It's not my thing.
If you like Budweiser, I think you might like Carlsberg.
Well, I actually don't drink, Aydin. I don't drink. The only beer I'll drink is maybe like a vodka martini, but not vodka martini. Sorry, I'll only drink a Smirnoff once on occasion. Here's the graph that you were showing. See, these five are just to control the beer industry. So just edit out here. Just go out of here. Obviously you've got A and B and V, all that stuff. The illusion of choice. I'll put it on big screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, I might have to scroll down a little bit though to see the full graph.
Scroll down a little bit. Yeah. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. You can still see it?
I can see the website. It might have brought up, but there we go. Yeah, just keep scrolling down. So yeah.
So yeah. What thing would you like to point out to the audience here?
Oh, I just look at how many. Okay, so the big red square at the top, that's AB InBev, SABMiller, which is what owns Budweiser, Bud Light, Natty Light, Rolling Rock, and then their indie quote brands like Red Hook, Goose Island, Shock Top, Land Shark, which, by the way, I think all taste kind of shit. I've had a lot of those. I don't like them. But then you have their import products, which may or may not be safe, because I don't know exactly, because they might have different agreements, right? So that's like Stella Artois, Hoegaarden, Corona, as mentioned, VB, which sorry Australians, but but yeah, I don't know exactly what their agreement is with all of these international. Modelo, right, which is one that people have gone to apparently is Modelo Especial. But there's also a merger, sort of a merger between AB InBev and Molson Coors. So if you really want to cut them out altogether, you also shouldn't buy Coors Light, Keystone Ice, Miller Lite, you know, well, it says Carling, but then actually we do have Carling. We don't have Carlsberg. We have Carling. I got them confused. But again, I don't know. That's an import for Molson Coors, so that one might be affected either. Blue Moon, just their indie ones, you know, I don't know these other ones. Just Blue Moon's the only one I recognize. And then, but the ones that are totally independent from any involvement with AB InBev and Molson Coors are Heineken, Diageo, which is like Guinness. Heineken's of course Heineken, Dos Equis, Desperados, and then Carlsberg, which is Carlsberg and other thing, Holstein. So if you are a beer drinker, and I know this is like impossible to ask regular people to do to a certain degree, because what they can obviously do is be like, I won't buy anything that says Budweiser on it, right? That one's easy. So they've tanked that product. And again, we're talking about, what was the huge number that it came up with of Anheuser-Busch.
The loss that Target's had.
Yeah, Target's $4 billion. Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, so the parent company, $27 billion over the course of a month. Like, I don't know how you.
That's a lot of money, man.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're going to make that up from their replacement with the. Well, here's the thing that's also interesting is that they got knocked down on their ESG score.
Oh wow!
Because they used to have a 100% perfect ESG score for their diversity, equity, inclusion shit. And then after they made a non-apology, they got knocked down. They didn't even apologize. It was like, well, sorry you feel that way kind of apology, you know? And they still got knocked down. So there's no appeasing the left ever. You have to, it has to be full and utter capitulation to their project. Or you get destroyed by them. The easier solution is don't capitulate at all in the first place. Particularly if you're a beer company or a company that sells clothing, a department store that's largely, you know, trafficked by middle America. It's ridiculous. It's just so stupid. And now Chick-fil-A also caught some flack because they put out some kind of.
Oh, did you see bizarre. Like head guys saying that, you know, people should go on their arms and kiss the boots of black people? Did you see that?
I did see that. Was that Chick-fil-A? Who was that?
It was Chick-fil-A. It was, and I was, oh my god, it was who showed it? I think it was
I saw the clip.
Mark Dice. Mark Dice was the guy who showed it. It's absolutely ridiculous, man. Like, honestly. By the way, your friend Scotch Bacon said something. Trust me, Aydin, keep the pro view of the boycott simple and focused. Expanding it beyond the scope is how you break a boycott.
I agree. I do agree with that, because that's what always is. Now, I think, you know, I saw a tweet and I retweeted it, responding to it the other day. Is that this guy basically, he was like, "What are conservatards gonna do? They won't be able to eat without because every single company is likes this, you know, is promoting this stuff." But the thing is that first of all, the images that this guy Mike Singleton, because his tweet kind of went semi-viral, used. It's this image. Tweet. This is old, These are from last year's Pride Month, and it's Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's, KFC, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Taco Bell, Arby's, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, Krispy Kreme, Domino's, Denny's. Is that Whataburger?
I'll just share it on the screen now.
Panda
Hang on,
Express.
sorry.
I don't know what BP is, but they all got their little pride flags. They don't this year, though. They have not done this to the same degree this year. So this is an old image, but he says, what's on the menu for MAGA Republicans this month? It would be easier to just boycott eating. And it's like, I don't need any of this slop. I mean, one, none of these exist in Guernsey, which is one thing, but you know what I mean? I don't need any of this trash. People, like, everyone would be healthier by, not eating any of this stuff for a month. Just, it's like, I said in my response to it, I said, I'm genuinely wondering if these kinds of people would starve if they didn't have massive corporations to buy ultra-processed trash from. It's like people who think electricity comes from the magical...
Oh, they would, because they rely on these things. So there it is. What's on the menu for a...
Yeah. Well, just don't eat slop for a month. Or how about just don't eat any slop anymore if you can help it? I know it's often tasty. Although I would say this, I don't know if I told you this before, but when I went back to the States for the first time in 3 years back in November, I was like, I just want a McDonald's burger because I haven't had one in so long. I went to McDonald's. It made me sick. It upset my stomach because it's so greasy. And I hadn't had anything that greasy and processed in so long. Because even when I went to the UK in May of 2022 for a conference, I didn't go to like a McDonald's. I didn't go to a Taco Bell. I went to a real restaurant.
Aydin, I just have to mention something. Here's a good quote by someone like Kevin Smith, or cook at home. Mm-hmm. Yep, just cook at home. Make your own food. There you go.
It's really, I mean, if this is the quality of food, I know people say like, well, I don't have any time because of my job. And it's like, you can make simple stuff. Even like a pre-made frozen meal probably wouldn't be that much worse from Kroger, but it's much cheaper actually to cook from home. And if you meal prep, so you do like you cook something and then you eat it for like 3 or 4 days, it doesn't, that's even if you're really busy, it's an easy way to do it so that you don't have to worry about or think about going to these trash restaurants where the food's terrible for you. It's packed full of seed oil, and it's just easier, cheaper, and healthier to eat at home. What the idea that like, oh, I'm gonna starve because I can't eat McDonald's is so ludicrous that only some inner city whack job could even think up something that stupid,
Fair enough. Aydin, can you keep improvising? Just 20 seconds. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Anywho, I think this whole pride thing, I think it really is a turning point. People have clearly had enough of it now. I do agree with you, Scotch Bacon, Lord Ghana, that we don't want to split up things too much, right? In that we should really keep the focus on Bud Light. Or Bud Light, like I said, is easy because there's a ton of other beer brands. It's very easy to just avoid Bud Light. Target's harder because you might only really have a Target near you, or usually if there's a Target, there's like a Walmart next door. Unfortunately, Kmart's dead, but because Kmart was its own thing. I used to work for Kmart, that's why I know that. But they're out. Although I don't know if Sears is still around, but you can't like get groceries at Sears. Sears is more of a traditional department store rather than a mixed kind of.
I'm back. Sorry about that, Aydin, and sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you were saying, how long did you work at Kmart for?
Like 8 months. Not long. I worked there because it was closer to a year, but I worked there because there was a weird mix up with my graduate program. And so basically I couldn't start in the fall when I was supposed to. They blamed it on me, but then later they apologized and they're like, yeah, that was actually a clerical error. And we're sorry about that. That was really fucked up. And it's like, that's okay. Just happy to be here. But anyway, so I had to go get a job because I'd rented an apartment in West Virginia to go to grad school. And then they're like, no, you can't go to grad school. So it's like, well, I need a job now. So I found a job at Kmart because they were hiring and I needed a job like tomorrow, you know what I mean? And they offered me a good deal because I had a couple undergraduate degrees and I was in the master's program technically. So they were like, well, we'll hire you to run the cash office. So the average person working at Kmart in West Virginia back then was probably like $8.50, like just, minimum wage. And that's lower minimum wage in West Virginia than it is in California, right? Because it's different circumstances. Much cheaper to live in West Virginia than California. So, but I was actually getting paid like $11 an hour, like a decent money. I could live on that fine. But a month after I got hired, it was announced, which is, I don't know, there was no communication clearly within the company, that the store was going to be liquidated and shut down. So I worked there again for I think 8 months until the store shut down. And it was chaos because liquidation means the whole point is to try and someone else bought the store essentially to sell all of the product that was in it. And you had to sell everything, right? And so week by week, everything gets cheaper and cheaper. And I've never seen people in just with my own eyes act like animals in that way. It slowed down after the first week, but people just thinking I can get a deal on something, even though everything was actually marked up to a higher price than it had been before because the in-store existing sales all dissipated as soon as the liquidation started. So you could get, it's all the silver jewelry was always 50% off, right? Which is a marketing tactic. But once the liquidation started, it was all priced at 10% off. So you were actually paying way more to buy jewelry at the Kmart once the liquidation started. But I mean, I saw people just fight each other over things in the store.
Oh God, that must be. What was it like? It must have been crazy during Black Friday. That must have been crazy during that point,
Well, by Black Friday, because I think this happened in. We got Halloween stuff in, so it must have been. Oh, it probably was near Black Friday. I think that I think it probably started in in November, in early November. So yeah, it was a little bit early that the liquidation started. So yeah, it was wasn't great. I don't remember. I wasn't working on Black Friday, so I wasn't there. Weirdly, they didn't schedule me for that, but I think it's because they knew it wasn't going to be as crazy as any. Because the thing is that the whole premise is, there's not going to be any new products coming into the store anymore, so you can just pick through the same stuff that's been here, and it's going to keep going down and down. Well, I mean, we did have more stuff in the back that had to be moved from the back out onto the racks, but there's no new products coming in. Nothing after October. You're not getting anything new. So I think that and the things people brought up first, of course, were all the TVs and electronics, which is the big Black Friday thing. It was a mess, but I like Kmart actually as a brand. I liked them. They're dead now, but it just goes back to the point is that Kmart's harder because Kmart sells food, Kmart sells clothes, Kmart sells everyday essentials. That's harder to boycott than beer.
It used to be pretty popular here in New Zealand. I remember in Kmart when I was younger, I used to go and get the lightsabers, back in the day. It was when they, that was cool fun. That was, I think, 2005 when I was a young kid. That was when, during the period of the Revenge of the Sith coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's... Good memories.
I do think that the fact that there are fewer companies who are putting the rainbow flag on their Twitter profiles is telling. Because it's the sacred, holy month of Pride right now. And if they're not doing it, that's indicative to me that a lot of these companies are weighing the cost-benefit analysis of what do we want, a higher ESG rating, or do we want to lose billions of dollars in revenue?
Do you remember that video a long time ago where Morgan Freeman was sitting down and this guy asked him about Black History Month and Morgan Freeman thought it was ridiculous? Mm-hmm. What was your opinion on that?
I think he was completely right. I mean, if you're going to... I agreed with I think his essential point was that, every month should be Black History Month because Black history is a part of human history. So if we're going to learn about history, you should be learning about Black history along with everyone else's history whenever you're learning about history. That shouldn't... When you relegate it to 1 month, it actually really diminishes. It's this is the one time we care about Black people. We have to, and it makes it feel so very fake and phony, right? Absolutely. This is the month we have to pretend that we care about Black history. And speaking of caring about Black history, that's another thing. That Cleopatra TV show completely bombed, and now they're getting sued by the state of Egypt.
That's funny. Oh yes, I know. That was so bad, wasn't it? That show was. Oh man.
I didn't watch it. I watched some reviews of it though, and it is factually incorrect. And it's clearly, I mean, if you wanted to do a dramatization and say that, it's a reimagining, and it's historical fantasy. You can do that. Like, you know, Sharp, for example. Have you ever seen the Sharp movies or Sharp, or what's it called? Last Kingdom. There's a
Last
Sharp.
Kingdom. Yeah. That's you talking about the Kingdom of Heaven? Well, hang on,
No,
sorry. Look,
Last Kingdom
Kingdom
is a
is.
TV show, which is set in England in like the 11th century, I believe, during the Scandinavian, Danish invasions, and it's
That doesn't look too bad. I'll check it out.
it's actually quite good. Yeah, 2 novels written by Bernard Cromwell, who also wrote this book series called about during the Napoleonic era.
It's the Saxon stories. The Saxon stories, it says here.
Yes, and then he also wrote novels based in the Napoleonic Wars that have been largely adapted as Sharp, and it's about a guy called Sharp. Those are historical fiction. Nobody has a problem with them because it's like, okay, I get it. Like, it's based in history, yes, but it's highly fantasized. It's fictive, or like the series Rome, right? You know, all these shows people have not had a problem with over the years because it's like, okay, I get
Spartacus, they had never had a problem with Spartacus. They never had a problem, with other TV shows. By the way, someone had to bring it up. Sharp with my favorite Sean Bean, the guy who always dies in films.
Well, he doesn't die in Sharp because Sharp lives forever. But
what a coincidence! Finally, in a film he doesn't die in.
Wait, did he die in any of those movies, or pretend to be dead? I don't actually remember now.
Well, he died in The Height show. He died in Lord of the Rings.
He's died in everything. Yeah,
he died in Game of Thrones. Like all. It's like a meme. I really wonder, has anyone actually ever got, like, one thing I want to go up to and say, hey, mate, why is it you always die in films? What is that?
Well, the Sharp TV series, they were like mini movies, weren't they? I've watched a couple of them. Like, they're like full, like, hour long. I guess that's just a TV show now. But the Sharp,
Aydin, I always wonder, like, what would it be like to go up to Sean Bean, ask him, why do you always die in films? And you know what you could do, Aydin? You could, like, use that, like, as a conspiracy. You could say, well, what are your conspiracy videos? When I go back to the Hollywood conspiracy and I go to MK Ultra, I kind of feel that Sean Bean dying is an Illuminati sacrifice and all that
stuff. I'm sure
it
is. They have to constantly sacrifice Sean Bean to Moloch or something. But yeah, like that
or the evil Lord Xenu.
Right. But that was always fine. No one had an issue with that stuff. Even there's some weird stuff with, like, there's black people in Last Kingdom, which is a little bit historically inaccurate, obviously. But I generally didn't find a lot of backlash to that because, again, it's historical fantasy. Uhtred is not a real person, right? Just like Sharp's not a real person. So there's some leeway there if you wanted, because it's fiction. When you have framed it as your series as a documentary about a historical person, and then you just say, actually, well, we don't really care about history because, I mean, it was just said so well, like in the promotional material where there's the woman who talks throughout the series, that like older black woman who's just like, my grandmother always told me that you better not listen to anything you hear in history class because Cleopatra was black. And it's like, okay, well, thank you for, being upfront about what this documentary is that facts don't matter. History doesn't matter. Your feelings are the only thing that matters. And it flopped. And again, they're getting sued by the nation of Egypt. So good luck with that. Have fun, Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't know. Like, I'm sure it'll be fine, but for her in terms of money, but I think people are really getting fed up. I think it's been pushed to a point where it's so. The point was to demoralize people, and they have gotten demoralized, but I think they've pushed it too far. They've pushed it past demoralization into, I've been demoralized, but now I'm angry. And I'm going to try to do. It's funny. I did see it was an article or something that I read on stream the other day that said that essentially that boycotting is an act of terrorism.
What? That's really ridiculous.
Well, yeah, because they have nothing left. It's like, well, if you protest, well, it's fine if they burn down the Targets and loot them. That's fine. And by the way, a whole bunch of Targets and Walmarts, of course, have had to shut down in leftist cities because all of them Chicago, and LA, and a lot of these leftist hot zones have all had to shut down their Walmarts and Targets because they all operate at a complete and utter loss because of the theft.
Oh, it's absolutely getting ridiculous, you know. Speaking of that, Aydin, so I've heard some conspiracy theories going around about Dylan Mulvaney. Do you think, I mean, also especially, you know, did you see him like labeling himself, you know, as a lesbian, which was fucking ridiculous?
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, he's not a gynephile. Well, I don't know. At first I thought he was a gay man, but I think he's just an attention whore.
Do you think that he's a fraud? Because I think he is. I think he's putting on as an act. Because if he really changed to become a woman and really had, you know, sex change, he would have done it by now. Do you feel like he's a fraud?
Oh, yes. He had, quote, facial feminization surgery is what it's called, which they just kind of softened his features. But he's not had breast implants. He's not had his wee-wee snipped. So, no, I think he is a fraud. And if you look, have you seen the clip of him on The Price is Right from a few years ago? He's just an attention seeker. He always has been. He was a gay comedian trying to get famous for years. And then he realized, oh, I know what I can do to get instantly famous. Pretend to be trans, because that's in vogue, which is what he did. Is he pretended to be trans, you know, I don't know. He says he's taken hormones, but over the course of the year, I didn't see him until the facial feminization surgery. He didn't grow breasts at all or anything like that. So I'm not even sure he was ever taking estrogen. But it's just, you know, I think he's absolutely a grifter who was doing all of this just because for money. And he's managed to tank one of the largest beer brands. I mean, Bud Light got moved down from the #1 beer brand in the United States to #2. Modelo's now beating them. You took them down a peg. They've been #1 beer for years, for decades in the United States. And it's not just him, because all Bud Light had to do was offer a sincere apology. And at this point, there's nothing really, because they just now have sponsored more pride parades. Just as of the last day or two, they've sponsored more pride parades, even while their stock price is cratering. I mean, I guess they're really hoping that ESG money is going to come through and save them.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. You know, when I look at that happening, what do you think? Speaking of that, I heard a rumor. Oh, I can't remember what it was. Sorry. Anyway, speaking of that, as we all know, Joe Biden, of course, collapsed on the stage, which wasn't very good, you know, and it's just I don't know how long he's going to last, Aiden. I kind of have a theory that he's going to, you know, stay in power until the end of the year, and I think Kamala Harris is going to replace him. I honestly, and I also heard a theory that they're actually going to be getting, you know, Michelle Obama, or that some people saying Gavin Newsom, the elite might line him up. And, you know, coming back to 2024, I heard, you know, that artificial intelligence could run, you know, the election in 2024, and that's scary. And knowing, you know, the general chat AI is very woke. I also have a feeling, you know, that whether Donald Trump can win in 2024, I just don't know. I think the election system's rigged. I think it doesn't matter. You know, the banking system has too much control over it. The Republicans didn't do anything about, you know, voter fraud in the midterms. Which is
infuriating. They didn't do shit about any of that. And, you know, like Biden, I don't think he's significantly worse now than he was when he started. Honestly, he's been falling for the last 3 years. He's been falling over. I mean, he fell on the steps on the plane within this first 6 months. I think this has just been ongoing.
He also fell over at a Navy festival. He also I remember there was one stage where he was at a school meeting where he was standing in. And he was just walking off somewhere. He just didn't even know he was going. And I was thinking to myself, mate, why is this guy president? He should not be president. He should be in a retirement home. That's one thing I heard that Owen Schroyer said a long time ago. That was back in 2020. And it just makes me think, obviously, we all know that Biden isn't the president. We all know that he's a puppet to the elite. He's being controlled by the bankers, the Rothschild, the Rockefellers, BlackRock, you know, the people that control the United States government, because the United States government, you know, has pretty much been a corporation since 1913 because of the Federal Reserve Act, you know, which I've gone on about a lot. And it's just, you know, it's just, and you know, Aydin, I look at, you know, the thing between Trump and Ron DeSantis, and that's not helping the country. You know, you're having a lot of Republicans fight amongst each other. You know, DeSantis is saying some things, you know, Trump is saying some things, you know, a lot of people, you know, criticizing Trump, you know, for his vaccines thing, which is true. I do think Trump, you know, messed up with the vaccine, you know, and the jab and all that stuff.
I don't think he could have possibly known. I mean, look, you know, Spoon and I have talked about this. You look at Trump runs things like a CEO because that's what he was. So he runs the country like he would run a business. Well, you know, if you're running a business and someone comes to you and says like, hey, we've got this problem with this technical issue. As CEO, you're not going to know what to do about it. So what do CEOs do when they run into a technical issue that requires expertise within their company? You outsource, you hire what you believe to be experts.
Oh, he had a lot of people stopping him. He had a lot of like neocons and stuff, and it was not easy for Trump to get stuff done. Personally,
look, I think regarding the vaccine, though, I don't know what else he could have done.
Can I just say something you might disagree with here?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I stopped supporting Trump was because the little sticky, you're not meant to mention it, was killing millions of, killing a lot of innocent people, you know, killing people. And the fact, you know, he praised it, Operation Warp Speed, kind of put me off that. And I kind of think that is a bit stupid. Not saying, you know, that Biden and Obama are better because they're also bad, but also just to let you know, like with Ron DeSantis, and especially, you know, isn't it fishy about him, you know, being backed by globalist billionaires?
Yeah, I don't trust
making a hate speech law, you know, like in Israel. That's, you know, pretty much, you know, that's pretty much, you know, going to make anti-Semitic. You all know anti-Semitic is wrong. It's not good. It's terrible. But of course, you know, people should be able, you know, to criticize the state of Israel. You know,
it's your First Amendment right. It's your First Amendment right to say something that's offensive. I don't agree with it personally, but it's a right to say something. Signing laws against freedom of speech are contradictory to the First Amendment. And you know, I do not trust Ron DeSantis, and he's been making a mockery of himself. I would say,
I don't, especially when he has globalist billionaires backing him. He's also making wars. There's also a thing that apparently he was, you know, torturing people, you know, Guantanamo Bay. That's a video that I watched by Abby Martin, you know, who's very good. I mean, you can be very respectful.
The Guantanamo Bay thing. Well, look, he's done good things. He did good things as governor of Florida under the lockdown.
Absolutely.
But he needs to look. He needs to say governor of Florida. It can only be Trump. And the thing that the Democrats are crying about right now is that, like, basically the Dems have already said there's not going to be any primaries. And now, particularly after this Biden fall, now all of a sudden they're like, oh man, we need primaries.
We do need primaries. You know, there was a poll that was done, you know, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. By the way, just to let you know, Aydin, if I could choose between Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because look, I don't support Trump anymore. I used to, but I've told you a lot of times why I don't support Trump, right? About, you know, how we continue the war in Yemen, sanctions on Venezuela, all that stuff. He didn't do enough to fight big tech in the Federal Reserve. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is awesome. He's not perfect. Because of course he's not perfect, I disagree, but he's good. In my opinion, the reason why I would choose, you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over Trump is he would end the military-industrial complex. He would fight against the elite. He would abolish the CIA. He would get more done. He would, you know, end a lot of the wars. He would criticize, you know, Federal Reserve. He would do more stuff, you know, that Donald Trump didn't do. You know that. Go ahead, and
you know, another Kennedy tried to end the CIA at one point in time. How'd that go?
I know, shocked, eh? You know, it's like, you know.
I'm just saying, like, nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys. I'd love to see it if it would happen, but I just get the feeling that
it would be awesome. It would be awesome. But you know what?
I need to see more.
Sorry, and I'm speaking over you.
More from him. Go ahead.
I think he's great. I think Robert F. Kennedy, I was watching his speech for the first time, and he's just really laid back. You know, he's a really nice guy. He talks about a lot of things, exposing a lot of the elite. He talks about, you know, how the CIA killed his, you know, son. Killed John F. Kennedy, which is true. We all know John F. Kennedy died from the CIA. You know, that's one thing I criticize Trump too. He didn't release the John F. Kennedy files. He should have done that. That's another thing that I criticize him too. You know, like I said, I just think he's better because he would end the military-industrial complex. He would, you know, get rid of all the military bases around the world. I just don't think Trump did enough. I just don't think he did. He obviously continued to sanction Venezuela, kill millions of people. He obviously, you know, continued the war in Yemen. He continued other things. You know, it's it's the state of the United States president. And look, will John F. Kennedy be able to get in the primaries? Probably not. He probably won't. And I think the fact is, that Joe Biden,
the
is
Dems
not
are going to
allowing.
hold a primary.
Oh, absolutely. Are they? Are they going to?
No, they're not.
Oh, sorry. I thought a bit of an error there. My speaker was acting a bit weird. Sorry for you.
No,
and just to let you know, Aydin, I'll tell you something spooky. There's a girl, by the way, shout out to Laurie Spencer. She's very talented content creator, very good. I had her on my show, and she talks about CIA, conspiracies about how the CIA, all the crimes they've done to the Middle East, the stuff, about the drug trafficking, the CIA, organizing in the 80s with the Reagan administration and all that stuff, specifically target black people and that stuff, like, whether you believe in that. Operation Unthinkable, which was the plot, where the United States were planning to nuke, Soviet Union, not Japan. Operation Unthinkable. She does a lot of those conspiracies. She's actually a big John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporter. Very good channel. You should watch her. She brings a lot of good videos. She's been on George Calloway's show. And what's her name? Kim Iverson. She used to work for The Hill.
Oh, yeah. Kim Iverson, yeah.
And guess what? She posted Robert F. Kennedy on her YouTube channel, and it got shut down just because she mentioned the name of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
They're targeting people, who have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in their thing, and it's absolute nonsense,
This is unfortunate, and it's not his fault at all, but he's got that disorder that makes his voice very, very gravelly, and I think that will, unfortunately, which it shouldn't matter, but I think that will, people who, Trump's just got like so much freaking energy. No one is going to beat Trump in 2024 unless there's a lot of, fortification. And I think I was talking to Spin about this earlier, is that if they fortify 2024 and Joe Biden wins, I think the American experiment's over. I don't think there'll be anyone left on the Democrats or Republican side who will think that there's any legitimacy left to the United States regime.
I just feel even if Donald Trump wins, I still have a feeling, that the elite, look, I don't think Donald Trump, look, whether he is against the, I don't know. But, he is against the elite, but I don't think he's really that smart because he needs to do other things. But I feel that in 2024, I have a feeling the United States dollar is going to collapse. There's going to be major inflation. Weimar Republic, the dollar's not going to collapse. It's going to lose its status of the Federal Reserve. You're going to be looking at Weimar Republic, inflation levels. And then, 2024, what will happen is probably, chaos, civil unrest. And then come 2025, United States will end up becoming the new South Africa. And I just don't know, if the United States, if Donald Trump will be able to save it. Personally, look, the United States will just be one big country that will just be very poor. It'll just be like one big South Africa. There's a lot of, and I feel like Texas and, Florida will want to, split and become its own countries. And if they want to, let it, let it. They want to become, if the United States want to balkanize, go for it.
I'm not sure it'll happen that quickly. I think that, like I said, the collapses are usually slow, but I do think Trump is the best choice. I have disagreed with a lot of the things that Trump's done, but the support is behind him. It is not behind DeSantis. Look at the polling numbers on that. Dear Lord.
He can't even make a crowd, DeSantis can. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I know. He can in Florida, but outside of Florida, no, he can't. And it's like, look, you need to stay in Florida. You want to run in 4 years from, 5 years from now, go ahead. But trying to split the Republican vote is so stupid. And yeah, again, he's paid off by globalist interests. So I can't help but feel that he's been basically told to do this, to split the Republican vote. And it's the only way that they have any kind of power against Trump's 2024 run, which he won't. The polls are pretty consistent, particularly after a lot of this recent stuff. I don't think that disastrous town hall.
VP? Who do you think should be Trump's VP?
So there's quite a number of choices. Carrie Lake would be one, but oh man, what's his name?
Michael Flynn, Mike Pompeo.
1 second.
Tim Scott? No, not Tim Scott.
Scott. No, Tim Scott doesn't have a real Larry Elder. Larry Elder is probably my top pick. Yeah.
Larry Elder, wow, that's actually interesting. Obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene, but not anymore with the whole Kevin McCarthy thing.
No. Oh no, Kevin McCarthy. He bent like a twig on that debt ceiling stuff. Screw McCarthy.
Right?
It's unbelievable. But yeah, Larry Elder I like quite a lot. I think he would be a good pick. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Carrie Lake. See, okay, unfortunately, unfortunately, you know, identity politics matters to so many people, both in the left and the right. And if you want to get any people who are, and you know, the key swing is always the independents or center left, center right people. The partisans, they're going to be partisan. They're going to vote R or D no matter what. So you always are looking for like getting the nonpartisan center and independent undecided votes. And one thing that would, like, you know, they called Trump a misogynist. They called him a racist. So you put in someone like Larry Elder, you put in someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Carrie Lake, someone, either a woman or, and I hate that we have to do that calculation, but I genuinely like Larry Elder and I genuinely like Marjorie Taylor Greene, even though people think she's crazy, but I don't think she's crazy. I think Larry Elder, however, given his, I've liked things, and I like Tim Scott too. I just don't think he has a snowball's chance. I mean, that was unfortunate. I like what I've heard him say, but I think it's a little platitude.
You know who I think should be his vice president? Ron Paul's son.
I would love Rand. Rand would be great.
And you know what, Aydin? If I could have a choice, look, obviously I'm in New Zealand, so, you know, but if I could have a choice, I would, if I had a dream scenario for a libertarian, I would love it if Rand Paul, you know, ran for president and Tulsi Gabbard, you know, was the vice president, or, you know, Larry Sharpe was the vice president. If Rand Paul, I would love it if he ran libertarian.
Tulsi's a Dem and has also divested herself. She's out of politics.
Yeah, I've seen that, you know, but I would love it if Rand Paul ran for Libertarian candidate. Personally, right now, for Libertarian candidates, anyone impressed me. I think Larry Sharpe is a good choice. You know, Spike Cohen is pretty good. Apart from that, you know,
I like Kristi Noem. I like Kristi Noem, but I haven't heard a lot from her in a while.
She's very pretty.
She's very pretty, and she's very smart. Yeah, I mean, well, they hate Lauren Boebert. That might be funny though, but you know.
Oh, she's also gorgeous, Lauren Boebert. But she's shame with her husband. That, bro, that's pretty shame. Shit happens. But you know, and also
Haley, I think the best. I mean, I have not heard anything. I have not heard Kristi Noem's name come up in this at all. Lauren Boebert, Nikki Haley, Carrie Lake, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and again Larry Elder, or and Tim Scott's like on very last place there, but he's also an option. The only problem with Rand Paul, and it's not a real problem, like I said, it's a faux problem that's created by this insane world that we live in where people care about id poll, is that if you have Trump running with Rand Paul, it's gonna be like, look at these two old white guys. White people. I hate white people. And it's, you know, that's what it's gonna be. So, you know,
right.
Which is, I hate that that's the state of things. But that will be, if he ran with Rand Paul as his Veep, that would be the narrative everywhere is, oh, white people. And I don't know how long that nonsense is gonna last. They push it everywhere, but I think that's also collapsing. I mean, after like just the BLM organizer, just, you know, one of them.
Oh, did you hear BLM is about to go bankrupt? Did you hear about that?
Yes, because all of their organizers just stole the bag, ran off with the money, and bought themselves multi-million-dollar mansions, and so great. How'd that work out? I think people are becoming sick of. I mean, obviously after the Summer of Love riots, people are getting really sick of that grift as well. I think people are starting to just get tired. They're tired of the race grifting. When you have, like people like Mizzy, even though it's in the UK, you have so many of these stories that just come out day after day of people just being so disgustingly, of Black people being disgustingly racist and being rewarded for it. I think it's not just white people; it's other Black people who are disgusted by it, and certainly I don't think
absolutely they're getting fed, because the truth is, Aydin, I remember, you know, a long time. I remember like in 2020 with the stuff, you know, there was. I remember, 2020 when there was a video go that showed the, you know, this girl. I think it was in the LA riots. This Black woman saying, "Stop this! Enough's enough! You're ruining your communities. You're ruining your families. This whole thing, dude." People. FBI agents did, you know, infiltrate the Black Lives Matter protests. Of course they did. It to make it as bad as it was. Of course it was organized. You know, it's not like. And even the Patriot Front, and even though they're not connected, is also. I mean, can I just say something, Aydin? Can I just say something about the Patriot Front?
Yeah.
Did you know something stupid about them? I watched a video on them by Kim Average, the girl from The Hill.
Mm-hmm.
How on earth can they be patriots when they've got the American flag upside down?
Yeah, they glow in the dark, man.
Like, that's freaking glowy. Hello. 2.0, that like no Patriot front, no Patriot side is going to have the United States flag upside down.
I know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think they glow in the dark. I think that's a federal operation. Because they come out of nowhere. Nobody knows, anything about this group. They just appear, and they're extremely organized, and they're all in a uniform. Yeah, I don't buy it. I really don't. I think that's
tell me about it. It's like the Trump supporters, who were outside, stamping on Ron DeSantis. I think that was a fucking fake, because a lot of Trump supporters don't wear masks. They're not a fan of wearing masks. Trump's fans.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been about 2.5 hours. I was gonna go get some lunch. So this seems like a pretty good time to stop.
It's not been 2 hours yet. It's been 12 minutes left. 12
okay.
minutes.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's we'll finish it off.
So guys, do you have any other questions you want to ask in the comments?
I'm trying to think of anything else that I think is interesting to bring up, because that was exhausted.
Hunter Biden's laptop photos. Hunter Biden's laptop photos.
Oh yeah. That keeps coming out. It never ends with that. I mean, that stuff was banned on Twitter, right? People, you couldn't even talk about it for 2 years, and it started out, of course, right around the election, right before the election.
Russian agency.
Yes, the Russian hacking, of course, of which there is no freaking evidence. But I'm astonished with the way that things get memory hold like that. Like COVID is also being memory hold. I mean, even today, like some people say, like, "Oh, you were never forced. No one was ever forced to do anything.
Oh my
God, that was never forced you in the lockdown." The way that these people will lie to your face, and I really wonder how much of it from regular everyday people is a lie, or if they just propagandize themselves into false memories. I talked about it in my last video. The people will actually have false memories that they always believed something once it becomes inconvenient. So you can literally like propagandize yourself into false memories. And I think that the COVID stuff, what I think I've mentioned to you before and is most horrifying and harrowing about the COVID stuff is that there was a study that came out that children that were born during the lockdowns were reported to using an infant Wechsler adaptation were found to have a 30-point IQ deficit.
Yeah, I saw that, especially, in the UK, they are struggling and spelling behind. Even here in New Zealand, Aydin, in New Zealand, the youth, because New Zealand had, the highest suicidal rate of young, teenage, young adults. Oh, the crisis has only gotten worse. It's only gotten worse. It's absolutely terrible. Like the youth here is suffering. There's not a lot of, people getting fed. The pandemic didn't do a lot for New Zealand either.
Oh,
the lockdowns were disastrous.
Let me ask you this thing, because I talked since we got a few minutes left. Let me what if I just read you the segment of this part about New Zealand to ask you if it's accurate, right? So since we got a couple of minutes left, would you be cool with that?
Yeah, that's fine, no worries.
Wait a minute. Word always does this to me, where it's like, all right. So I'll just read this and tell me if you think this is accurate. The COVID pandemic was certainly an event that shook the faith of many in democratic systems, as lockdowns and regulations restricted liberties around the world, and speculation abounded regarding everything from the virus's origin to the efficacy of masks to the effectiveness of lockdowns. Well, after much of the hysteria has since died down, many of those concerns, which were previously deemed as conspiracies dangerous to our democracy, have since been confirmed as legitimate, be it that the virus did come from a lab, or that cloth masks do not prevent the spread, or that lockdowns were not only inefficient, but had significant deleterious social ramifications. I didn't put this, like, the depression and suicidality rates went through the freaking roof, but including a potential 30-point IQ deficit, which I mentioned, for babies born during them, for years to even suggest such things was not only considered conspiracy, but outright banned from being mentioned on social media, ostensibly out of fear of inciting a lack of trust in democratic governments. So was there a relationship between belief in what were once called conspiracies and are now just accepted, if not often mentioned, facts about aspects of the pandemic and distrust of the government as well as political ideology? Sorry, I had to give you that run up to it. To answer that question, we can look to a study from Marquis et al. 2022, who examined the relationship between trust in the government and belief in conspiracies in a sample of New Zealanders. Is that right? Is it New Zealanders?
You can just say Kiwis. A lot of people just say Kiwis or New Zealanders. You know.
Yeah, I was struggling with whether to say New Zealander or Kiwis, but I think it's more clear if I say New Zealanders. Collected during the COVID pandemic, given that New Zealand is a country which experienced some of the most stringent lockdown measures and regulations in the Western world. Although the study did not specifically ask questions about the pandemic itself, the timing of the study gives us interesting insight into how people were feeling about the government and conspiracies during a time when many felt their rights were being infringed upon. I think that's fair to say that they were some of the strictest regulations.
Yeah, they were in many ways. We weren't as bad as Australia were in the lockdowns, but we definitely were strict in a lot of things, you know.
Yeah. So I think that, I want your opinion on it if you think this is fair. Utilizing a sample of over 40,000 participants drawn from the New Zealand Attitudes and Values study, participants' general belief in conspiracies was measured with the question, quote, I think that the official version of major world events given by authorities often hides the truth, end quote. In addition to general conspiracy beliefs, subjects were questioned regarding their political ideology, political efficacy, which is the degree to which one believes that he or she is capable of influencing politics, the centrality of political beliefs to one's identity, trust in politicians, satisfaction with the government, and intentions to vote in the 2020 New Zealand election. As with all the studies we looked at so far, which this is like way considerably through the video, but trust me. While staunch conservatives did tend to be more likely to believe in general conspiracies, the relationship was not linear, with those closest to the center and also those furthest to the left, similarly being more likely to believe in general conspiracies than those more to the moderate left or right. Again, the tendency skews right, but there was no simple one-to-one linear relationship between ideology and belief in conspiracies. That may have something to do with the nature of the New Zealand government, which was, okay, see if you, this is a bit of a joke, but see if you agree with this. It may have something to do with the nature of the New Zealand government, which is a functional testing ground for all of the really authoritarian nightmare policies later to be unleashed on Australia, a country so free that comedians who criticize politicians get their houses burned to the ground.
It's one of the testing grounds, not the main, but it's one of the tests. I would say one of the testing grounds, not the main testing ground.
Well, okay. All right. Functional, I think that's probably still fine then. It's like, yeah, we're going to do real authoritarian. We'll use New Zealand to test what the real authoritarian shit we're going to do in Australia. Because that's how it seems to me, at least, as an outsider. It's like, yeah, like we're going to test it out here. Unsurprisingly, participants who identified themselves as being left-wing or liberal were more supportive of the New Zealand government during the pandemic than those who identified as right-wing or conservative. Those who were more satisfied with the government, again, more left-leaning New Zealanders, were also more trusting of politicians, predictably, and perhaps relatedly, the centrality of political ideology was more important to more left-leaning respondents, as was political efficacy, indicating that more conservative or right-leaning people felt that they had less capacity to influence the very politics with which they were so dissatisfied. There was a small negative relationship between trust in the government and belief in conspiracies, as well as between political efficacy and such beliefs. Adherents to conspiracies were significantly less trusting of politicians, and there was a small but positive relationship between conspiracy beliefs and conservative political identity. The variable most, this is just, let me skip through the math. Or are you interested? Because, I mean, it's going to be in the video either way.
No worries. Just quickly, if you want.
Yeah, the variable most strongly correlated with voting intentions was political identity, centrality, but this association was minor with a correlation of only 0.13. Once again, it does not appear that conservatives are uniquely prone to believe in conspiracies than more centrist people or those on the left. However, it is likely that when one's political party is in power, proponents of that party are more satisfied with the government, more trusting, and more convinced that they have the ability to influence politics, all of which is negatively related to belief in conspiracies. When one feels that his or her politics are being represented by those in power in a democratic government, then that person may also be less likely to believe the same government is obfuscating the truth or engaged in conspiratorial behavior. Perhaps someone like Dr. Moore, who's that Oxford guy I talked about earlier who literally cited studies incorrectly, would look at these data and conclude that the results are indicative that conservatives, being less trusting with the labor-led government and slightly more favorable towards general conspiracies, in tandem with the moderately powerful negative relationships between conspiracy beliefs and support for the government and trust for politicians, Dr. Moore would probably contend that conspiracies are a real threat to democracy. However, I would argue that it's really quite rational for those who feel politically powerless to not trust governments enacting authoritarian measures upon them and perhaps be more open to conspiracy theories when their trust in such a government a government the PM of which, Jacinda Ardern, was basically forced to resign from in disgrace in 2023, thereby turns negative and is not indicative of a threat to democracy so much as the existence of such a government is in and of itself to the promises of liberal democracy in the first place. When it comes to the case of New Zealand, then, while yes, it may be that people are more likely to believe in conspiracies, are also those who are more likely to believe in conspiracies are also those who distrust the government and politicians who they feel politically and who feel politically helpless. I would also contend that those beliefs are not entirely misplaced, as even after Ardern resigned in disgrace following her handling of the COVID pandemic, can you really blame those with little faith and efficacy of the government who tend to be more likely to believe in governmental conspiracies and maybe more likely to be conservative to be so critical when Ardern was replaced with another Labour politician who went about doing much of the same? Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, it's good. That's really good. You know, really good. A lot of the stuff you do is good, so don't worry about it, Aydin. You do really good at this stuff.
Well,
you're very precise.
I got you here for a minute to ask you, because I always, you know, I've never lived in New Zealand. I've never been in New Zealand. So while I've got you to be like, do you think that's fair? You know, because a lot of times I'll get responses where people are like, well, you don't live there, you don't know. So I appreciate the input.
You're all good. Don't worry about it. It is what it is. I make mistakes too, Aydin. You're gonna do a really good job. It's very good analysis. It's very good. It's all good.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm just again. I have one more line here. Is that in the case of New Zealand, it turned out that there were probably some legitimate reasons to distrust the government when the head of that government was forced to resign in disgrace. That's the only thing. So I think that's actually it. Yeah. I'm glad you think that was fair and not not incorrect, because I didn't say like. Again, I've talked to Australians who've said like, "Oh, New Zealand is so much worse with the lockdowns," and then Kiwis say, "Oh, Australia is so much worse." I don't know which one's correct because I'm outside of it.
Australia was worse.
Australia made those camps.
Well,
so
actually, no, it depends where I actually think when it comes to that, the better answer to say was the worst places was definitely Australia was worse, but the worst places in Australia was definitely New South Wales, Brisbane, Canberra, and Victoria. Absolutely. I think it's the state of Victoria, is it? Yeah, I think that's it. The worst.
New South Wales sounds like a real fucking hellhole from everything I hear about it.
Oh, it's
in terms
terrible.
of at least in terms of the politicians running the show, you know, not the like area itself necessarily, but just the politicians seem utterly corrupt.
Yeah. So Aydin, before we go, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Aydin Paladin, Aydin Paladin. I'm also on Twitter under that same name, Aydin Paladin. And yeah, that's about it.
By the way, before we
I
finish
do have
up,
a Rumble and stuff. If you watch on not Rumble, Odyssey, all my stuff gets uploaded to Odyssey, also under Aydin Paladin. If you don't want to give YouTube any views, you know.
But sorry about that. That was a bit rude of me. I don't know why I did that.
No. I didn't know. It wasn't rude at all. I didn't even think about it until like.
I just want to bring some good news. The Texas Governor Albert has officially signed into Bill 14 into law. No more translating kids in the state of Texas. That's good. That's a good law.
Very good. Very good.
You know.
Let's go.
You know.
I think you're going to see more and more of that. This trans kid stuff it's satanic, and there's no other word for it. I'm sorry. It's evil. It's satanic. I don't know why this is the hill they want to die on. I know it's because it has. I do think. Yeah, my last point on this though. I think the reason they're doing it is because it's part of their Bill Gates WEF, you know, depopulation strategy.
Absolutely.
And also because they want long-term people who need lifelong palliative medical care, so they are always reliant on the government. They're slaves. They're unable to get off the plantation. The Democrats have always loved doing that. They did it they've done it to Black people for hundreds of years. They were the party of slavery. They were the party of Jim Crow, and now they're the party of the welfare state. So they've always wanted. They always want always want groups of people who are either legally indentured to them or culturally indentured to them, and they've never changed.
Absolutely. Hang on, Aydin. I just want to before we go, can we share that article, or do you have to go?
Oh no, go ahead.
I want to share that article because it's really good news. Because this is, big news. Sorry, I'm just looking for it, but it's very good news that Governor Albert. I'm not a fan of him either, but that's a very good thing that he did that. That's a very good thing that. Could you send me a link of the tweet of where that someone has announced it? Governor Albert.
Oh, me. I didn't.
No, I'm just trying to find it so I can share it so we can both read it. The dignities of the bill together. Sorry, what?
That's okay. Let me just Google it real quick. February of 2023.
Oh God, that was awkward, wasn't it? To get you to ask to do it right.
No, here it is. Governor Greg Abbott. Oh no, it's fine. Governor Greg Abbott said legislation barring trans use from assessing transition-related care. Now, remember, this is click2houston.com. It's a local news site, I assume. But transition-related care. Let's be clear about what that was. From accessing puberty blockers and hormone therapies. Well, let's talk about what those are very briefly. Hormone blockers are largely Lupron Depot, a drug that I have taken. Lupron Depot, if it causes this in adults, and it definitely causes it in kids, extreme osteoporosis, diminished bone growth so that you will be stunted in terms of your height. And if you are a female to male trans person, it means you're going to be a manlet anyway. And you're putting manlets in quotes because you'll never be a man, but you were going to be a manlet no matter what because you're a female. But now you're going to be an extra manlet if you take this stuff. You will never grow to the height you were normally supposed to grow to. And you're going to have osteoporosis from the age of 14. Lupron Depot, when I was administered it, I was told I would never be able to take the drug again. It was a one-time use policy because of the extreme harm that it causes to skeletal structure. And I took 3 doses of it over a 3-month period. They are putting these kids on it for 5-6 years.
Oh,
3 months. I was told never again. That's how strong it is.
I actually can't find, the articles, the things messing up. So don't worry about it. But hey, good news. Governor Albert did something good, which is very good.
Listen to this framing here in this article. Senate Bill 14's passage brings to the finish line the legislative priority for the Republican Party of Texas, which opposes any efforts to validate transgender identities. Oh my God, put more spin on it, please. You spin me right round, baby, right round. Trans kids, their parents, and LGBTQ advocacy groups fiercely oppose the law, and some have vowed to stop it from going into effect, I'm sure. Yeah. Texas, home to one of the largest trans communities in the U.S., is now one of 18 states that restrict transition-related care for trans minors. Trans minors, oh my God, I'm just, Cruelty has always been the point, said Emmett Schelling, executive director of the Transgender Education Network of Texas. It's not shocking that this governor would sign SB 14 right at the beginning of Pride Month. However, this will not stop trans people from continuing to exist with authenticity as we always have. Do you think, okay, so Emmett Schelling is both Jewish and a woman who took the name Emmett, certainly not a reference to Emmett Till. Oh, please shout your victimhood from the mountaintops harder, lady.
I know, right? Yeah.
You're a transgender woman or a female who wants to transition to be a man, and you're like a Democrat, leftist operative. You're like, what name shall I take? I know, Emmett. Okay, I get it. It's a little on the nose, but good job.
Sorry if I made any mistakes there, Aydin. Sorry about that. I was a bit silly.
No, it's fine. I hadn't read this until it just happened like an hour ago. Authored by the New Braunfels Republican State Senator Donna Campbell, the law bars trans kids from getting puberty blockers and hormone therapies, treatments, and medical support groups. So this article is extremely fucking biased. I'd have to find the actual. Where is the Senate Bill 14? Is this the actual?
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, here's the actual bill. That's what actually matters. I don't.
Do you want to send it to me on the private chat so I can put it on the screen for people to get a better view?
Yes, 1 second. Is this I need the full report bill. Is this it? Bill to be entitled an act. Yep, here we go. Here's the actual bill, SB 14. Relating to prohibitions on the provision of certain children, by the way, of procedures and treatments for gender transitioning, gender reassignment, or gender dysphoria, and on the use of public money or public assistance to provide these procedures and treatments. This is if enacted. Okay. The Child Health Plan may not provide coverage for services prohibited by Section 161.702 that are intended to transition child's biological sex as determined by the child's organs, chromosomes, and endogenous profiles. So subchapter gender transitioning and gender reassignment. 1. Definitions in the subchapter. 1. Child means individual who is younger than 18. 2. Healthcare provider means a person other than a physician who is licensed, certified, or otherwise authorized by the state laws to provide or render health care or to dispense or prescribe prescription drugs in the ordinary course of business or practice of a profession. So this is for therapists, psychotherapists. Medicaid means the medical assistance program. Physician means a person licensed to practice. They're just defining terms here. So a healthcare provider is like a therapist probably, or non-doctor. So then those are the defined terms. Then we have prohibited provision of gender transitioning or gender reassignment procedures and treatments to certain children for the purpose of transitioning a child's biological sex as determined by the sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous profiles of the child, or affirming the child's perception of the child's sex. If that perception is inconsistent with the child's biological sex, a physician or healthcare provider may not knowingly, 1. Perform a surgery that sterilizes the child, including castration, vasectomy, hysterectomy, oophorectomy, that's a removal of the ovaries, metoidoplasty. I don't know what that one is.
Sorry, I was just going to say something. As you're talking, I'm just, doing the mouse following what you say.
Sorry. I read fast. Surgical creation. Oh, metoidoplasty is making a fake pee-pee. Orchiectomy. I know what that is. Oh, that's removing the testes. Penectomy. What is that one? I don't know. Some of these other ones. Orchiectomy I should have known, but what? No. Penectomy, not appendectomy. Even Google's confused by this.
Low.
Surgical removal of the penis. I should have assumed. A phalloplasty. These are just both words for the same thing. That's creating a fake PP. Vaginoplasty, mastectomy, removal of the breasts. 3, provide prescribe. So this is okay. Yeah. Don't do this to children under the age of 18. Something like these castration. This is permanent sterility. Okay. That's why they're in here. Perform mastectomy. That's 2, which is not permanent sterility, but you can't grow this back. I was shocked. Have you seen some of these kids? Like they grow up and they're like, they told me if I wanted my breasts back, I could grow them back. And it's like, oh girl.
It's absolutely messed up. It's disgraceful. No, what is going on? Did you want to read the rest of the bill or just wanted to read these bits?
Yeah, I'll go through the rest of it since we're in this. Let's finish off with this. As long as you're cool with it.
Yes, fine, no worries.
3, provide, prescribe, administer, or dispense any of the following prescription drugs that induce transient or permanent infertility. So they're going to get real mad about this part. Here's the thing. These drugs do cause transient, which is temporary, or permanent infertility. Okay. Puberty suppression or blocking suppression, prescription drugs to stop or delay normal puberty. This we don't actually really even know the longitudinal effects of Lupron and other puberty suppressants on children because it's never been studied. And now it can't be studied because it's transphobic to study it. I would say this. Do you know what Lupron Depot does when you administer it to an adult female? It causes simulated chemical menopause. That's why you lose all your bone mass and why you don't gain any bone mass if you're a child who is given this stuff. That part we know. We also know that people who are given these puberty suppressants, both males and females, often do have decreased fertility. So the supraphysiologic doses of testosterone to females, which is what that will always do, is that's going to lower your voice, and that can cause infertility. The supraphysiologic doses of estrogen to males. I'm not sure what this does longitudinally to male fertility, but I can't imagine it's probably great, which is hence why it's included in the bill. Also, none of these happen. They need more research. If you want you need to research it before you make prescriptions on it and start doing it to children. The most vulnerable people on Earth are children. Yes. And why is there no research being done? As a scientist, this drives me up the fucking wall.
I agree, Aydin. And by the way, Aydin, you know, it's a good thing you're reading this bill. I really appreciate you're doing an awesome job right here. You know, keep going.
Thanks. Well, I read this kind of stuff all the time. Remove any otherwise healthy or non-diseased body part or tissue. Yeah. Well, okay. I've heard them say like, oh, it's just like an appendectomy. We do appendectomies. Since that was brought up, because Google didn't understand the term, penectomy. Appendectomies are done because the appendix is burst or is damaged. Like I have an appendix in my body because it's never been a problem. It is an organ that doesn't do anything, but just because the appendix doesn't do anything that we really have been able to detect doesn't mean that you cut open someone and remove their appendix if it's not necessary. So these are
absolutely, you don't do that because that's very dangerous. You can like get infection and stuff like that. No one should cut the appendix if it's literally not needing to be cut out.
Right, if it hasn't burst, that's not safe. You do not do surgeries unless they're necessary, because any surgery is dangerous. Even
you can get infection, you can get diseases. Yeah. It's like, and they say this is healthcare. They say, oh, this is healthcare. No, it's not. No, how is this something when it's potentially going to give people, diseases, especially when someone's going to be allergic to disease that can give them allergic reaction to surgery, and even people who are actually allergic to anesthesia. There are people allergic to anesthesia too.
There in many hospitals they have to constantly fight MRSA, multi-strain resistant staphylococcus, which is like, where do people get MRSA from? Hospitals. How do they get infected with MRSA? Which, by the way, causes necrosis and can kill you so easily. And because
what's the MRSA?
Multi antibiotic resistant. It's an antibiotic resistant strain of staphylococcus. So it's a staph infection. Staphylococcus, excuse me. It's a staph infection that it cannot be treated with antibiotics. It's evolved to be resistant to them. It's extremely common in hospitals, and it's a killer. You cut someone open in a hospital, actually, and weirdly, because of some of the sterility of hospitals, it's allowed it to flourish over the last couple decades. So it is a version of staph, which is a staph infection. People get staph infections all the time, like sort of. It's a bad infection, but the MRSA stuff is something that exists exclusively in hospitals, essentially because it's resistant to. It developed in hospitals because obviously the bacteria evolve in response to antibiotics. And it's a fucking killer, man. So yeah, you don't do surgery unless you need to. Let's see. Yeah. Removal of, yes, here we go. Exceptions. Section 161.702 does not apply to the provision by physician or healthcare provider. Remember, this one is a therapist. This one's an actual doctor. With the consent of the child's parent or legal guardian of one, does not apply to the provision of with the consent. Section 1 does not apply to the provisions by physician or healthcare provider with the consent. Okay. So if the parent and doctor both agree, so we have the parents and the doctor must agree, then one, puberty suppression or blocking prescription for drugs for the purpose of normalizing puberty for a minor experiencing precocious puberty. All right, this is normal. They'll talk about this. They'll be like, oh, but puberty blockers have been used in children for forever. Yeah, if they have precocious puberty. Precocious puberty is when puberty starts before the ages of about 11 or 12. Usually there's some other underlying genetic or hormonal problem. Sometimes it's the result of molestation, horrifyingly, but precocious puberty is like, yes, when like a 6 or 7 year old girl starts menstruating, right? If that happens, it happens sometimes. It's extremely rare, but sometimes like a 6 or 7 year old girl will start menstruating. A lot of times there's other things involved, which we'll get to here in a moment, is that can be caused by having an intersex disorder or by having a tumor, for example, on the ovaries. There's all kinds of things that can cause precocious puberty, but you want to stop that. You don't want a 6 or 7-year-old or sometimes like 3-year-old to start menstruating. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you put them on puberty blockers.
It's fucked up.
It's extremely rare, but it is a thing that happens. So yeah, you want to block the hormones to allow the child to develop as a child normally, so that then puberty can start occurring as it's supposed to occur in early adolescence, right? That's normal. That makes sense. I'm all on board with using hormone blockers in children who are experiencing precocious puberty to make sure that they can experience puberty normally. 2, appropriate and medical necessary procedures or treatments for a child who, 1, is born with a medically verifiable genetic disorder of sex development, including 46 XX chromosomes with virilization, 46 XY chromosomes with undervirilization, or both ovarian and testicular tissue. These are intersex disorders, all of these, which are hyper rare, just as precocious puberty. B, does not have the normal sex chromosome structure for male or female as determined by a physician through genetic testing. So the only time they're saying that, like, you're doing anything with hormone blockers is in intersex people, which make up 0.001% of the population. You know, I have a friend who's intersex, who I've known for years, and she's not in favor of this shit at all. She's I always forget which disorder she has, but was basically born presenting female, but had I think like undescended testes, and that they had to remove because they become cancerous. You know, they basically they become malignant. And so she's lived her entire life as a female and presents as a female, looks like a woman, sounds like a woman, and even though genetically is male, but you would never know. But this is, again, 0.01% of the population who have diseases like this. And she's not in favor of this crap at all, by the way. This bill, yes, but not of the crap that the lefties want to do with kids.
Aydin, I'm actually planning to go. I'm sorry, might have to cut it short. I'm actually was planning to maybe end this a bit quicker, but do you just want to? Sure. Sorry, you're not doing anything wrong. You're all good. I'm not sure. I mean, we should read the whole bill, but do you want to read it quicker?
It's a bit long. I can try to. Yeah, I think. Let's see. Is there anything else in here that is really specific? Okay, we'll just do this. Prohibited use of public money. I think we got that. You can't use public money to do this. Prohibited state health plan reimbursement. Same thing. Can't use state money. Attorney General enforcement. If the Attorney General has reason to believe a person is committing or has committed or is about to commit a violation of sections 161.702, the Attorney General may bring an action to enforce this subchapter. So if you violate it, you're in legal trouble. Let's see. Venue for action brought under this section is, court stuff. Human Resources Code being an amendment. The medical assistance program may not provide coverages. The rest, okay, that's it. We actually got through the part that's important. If you violate the things that we just read, you are fucked. You can get legally fucked. Oh, wait. What's this, though? Yeah, this is just, these are just descriptions of more of the specifics. Occupations codes amended to read as follows. Physician or applicant for a license to practice medicine is prohibited. Practice if that person submits to the board false or misleading documents. Yeah, this is all the legal stuff. You can't lie. You can't drink. You can't get fucked up. You can't do a criminal abortion. This is all just reframing it. Wait, prohibited hacks. This is the last part that should be important. Prohibited acts regarding gender transition. Yeah.
Is it on the last page?
It's on page 8 where it starts.
Okay, page 8.
Section 164.0552. This is the last part that seems of most interest here.
0.552.
Yeah. So one of the actions that would be grounds for potential dismissal and losing your medical license is performing gender transition or gender reassignment procedure or treatment in violation of 161.702. And then 0.552, prohibited acts regarding gender transition or gender reassignment procedures and transitions on certain children. The board shall revoke the license of other authorized to practice medicine physicians who violate section 161. Got it. Board shall refuse to admit to examination or refuse to issue a license or renew a license to a person who violates this section. That's about it. If you do any of the things that we talked about earlier in the earlier parts of this act, you lose your fucking license.
That's really good. You did a really good job explaining that. Awesome.
Hopefully.
Aydin. That was really cool. You did a good job. No, it was really good. I really enjoyed. Sorry, I had to cut it a bit short, but you were fine.
I'll probably read it on stream on Wednesday as well, because that's interesting to see. Because I don't see, there's nothing about this that is transphobic. There's nothing about this that is
nothing wrong.
If you have because they always have, but what about intersex people? There's specific things in here, exceptions. If you have an intersex disorder, absolutely, it's fine. If you have precocious puberty, it's fine. You can't do this on children who don't have a disorder, though.
Absolutely not. No.
I agree. Good on Texas.
So, Aydin, what do you think the backlash is going to be? Do you think there's going to be a lot of protesters?
They're going to scream.
I know, right?
Whatever, scream.
They're going to be ree. All that same.
Lots of rain.
You know.
They're gonna claim. It'll be interesting because by next Wednesday, I'm sure there will be all kinds of protests. But here I've got the document here. It's easy to find, and I'll read it on stream as well on our stream on my podcast next week. And if they're screaming about it because they're going to say, "Oh, it's preventing children from getting necessary care," oh, they have intersex disorders, they need it. Nope.
It's not necessary care. There's so many things that's bad about it. This generation we live in, you know. But yeah, thank you very much, Aydin, for reading that bill. It's very good news that Governor Albert did it. You did a very good job today. I just want to say to everybody, we should definitely do another show. I just want to say to everybody, you know, thank you for joining the Welsh Republic podcast episode 112 today. And please, everybody, go and check out Aydin Paladin. She makes absolutely fantastic videos. Her latest video on the gaslighting politics is very good. I look forward to her conspiracy. And please go and give her a like and subscribe. She's very talented, very underrated, very good, very smart when she comes to this stuff. So yeah, go check her out and go give her a like and subscribe. Thank you for coming on, Aydin. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for talking again. Well, always enjoy talking to you, man.
And I just want to say to everybody, thank you for joining the Welsh Podcast episode 112. I will be back next week. Have a nice weekend, everybody. Take care. God bless you all. Stay safe. And goodbye. Bye.